Hello, dear viewers. Support me by subscribing to my channel and share my video if you like it. And also, make sure you comment your thought. Now let's start the video. Silence now reigns supreme as Jon Stark turns to his panting men with a smirk. Sound the horns! Stannis Baratheon is dead. We have won. The battle of blood and tears. Lady Deiana Tully versus the Knights of the Vale. Griffins are unlike dragons. They do not have the strength that dragons have. A dragon's power is its massive size, its near impenetrable hide, its ability to fly, and most of all, its firepower. Dragons are sledgehammers of power. Their role is to fly in the front lines, like a god bringing punishment from the heavens, able to lay waste to armies with impunity. A griffin does not have such an advantage. Unlike dragons, griffins are smaller, way smaller. Sure, they are mighty beasts and would be able to tear through armor and the thickest of hides this world has to offer with ease. But compared to a dragon, they are less as a species. They do not have its size nor its powerful hide, and neither does its firepower. No. Griffins are not sledgehammers like the flying lizards. No. They are scalpels and spears. Shoot it at the right direction, and even the best of armies will fall like flies. The Battle of Blood and Tears would be proof of that, or rather, as the future historians would call it, the Massacre of Blood and Tears. Atop Godric, Deiana observes the gathered approaching Valomen below. She has to admit that Jon Bronze Royce managed to pull the Knights of the Vale together even from the roadblock she tried to put up. The Valomen have started their advance with 40,000 men, and that includes camp followers and levies from the Eerie, and now they are less than 20,000 thanks to the small welcoming committee she has done. Of course, 5,000 died from that small avalanche of misfortune, but many are rather wounded, and the ever-chivalrous Knights of the Vale left rather a large portion of their army to help their fellows back there at the mountain pass. She has to admit that Royce and the lords with him might be considered protagonist if it is ever written in a book. A good leader knows how to command and not willing to abandon his men to whatever fate that await them while they lie helpless and wounded. Well, his bleeding heart is something that Deiana is more than happy to take advantage of. It takes more than one man, after all, to carry a wounded knight unarmored, and thus the reason why so much of their retinue has been forced to be left behind. One fact remains, however, and that is the Valomen still outnumbered the 7,500 Rivendell soldiers that are with her right now, just as Deiana plans it. By the end of this day, her name would once more be mentioned in the annals of Westerosi history. Myrcella might have the majority of the Blackguard legions and the levy supports of Rivendell's homesteads, but Deiana has personally chosen the cream of the crop of her preparations for this moment. With her right now are the Silver Order members in the entirety of its retinue, the Death Dealers in full force, and of course, the sworn knights of Rivendell, who by duty is here. Say what you will of the Riverlands, but many of her former father's vassals are simply good men who are not lying idiots. If you treat them right, all in all, they are the army she has chosen that would add another coin in her path to being Deiana the Great. Still 20,000 men with the entirety almost made up of horse is a niche that would not be easy to bring down. The Vale is proud of their knights, and unlike the Crownlanders, they actually have the skill to back it up. Long and bitter history of her old life teaches her that any army faced with heavy cavalry in an open field would likely be trampled underneath its mighty hooves and lances. The Vale army approaching her knows that, as do every lord in Westeros. That is what Myrcella actually is banking on. The greatest strengths of the Vale are its knights. Proud, skilled, well-armored, and strong, they are indeed a strength to be reckoned with in any army and a force multiplier. A couple of dozen knights can ride down an army of levies 5 times its number and still be ready for another fight. Unfortunately for them, that is also their weakness. Knights are proud, almost as proud as lords, in fact. There is also the little hiccup that the Knights of the Vale are strong believers of the Seven and rather hate them for the humiliation during the War of the Faith. That is where Deiana would hit them hardest. Their hubris. Angling her griffin down, she flies down to where her army is already waiting. Ironically, none of Deiana's men, despite being skilled riders themselves, have their mounts with them. With a small nudge of her foot, Godric glides gracefully before landing with a small thud on the front of her army. They are coming. Is everyone ready? Deiana asks, looking at the grim and resolute faces surrounding her. Unlike the forces commanded by Myrcella, who would be right now engaging probably the Lannister force, the bands that Deiana commands are the best of the best that Rivendell has to offer. All of them are experienced and have seen death and war. Plus, there are also the loyalty potions that they have been drinking daily. Any one of them would rather saw off his own arm than even think of disappointing her. Surly and moored, you know what to do, Deiana nods to the head of the Silver Knights, who salutes in silence before gesturing for the entire order of Silver Knights to move forward into a walk towards in the direction of their enemy. Deiana signals for the rest of her forces to stay as the nearly 3,000 knights of the Silver Order stride forward with their swords, axes, and maces at the ready. No one is holding a spear or a lance as they move in a constant pace towards the direction of the Velaman, who have finally finished marshalling their 20,000-strong force outside the Bloody Gate. Estimating that the distance walked by the Knights of the Silver Order is enough, Deiana turns with a simple nod at Sir John, who shouts at the top of his lungs, "Archers, knock, draw, loose." 2,000 archers, basically men-at-arms of the regular knights, sworn to Rivendell, fire upward with their archers. They are not expert archers by any standard, no. They are just regular men, taught to shoot with basic bows, heavily enchanted in secret to have the range of long bows. As it is 2,000 arrows fly to the air, heading like rainfall at the Knights of the Vale. The distance is far, but the enchantment of the bows make it so that they are able to reach their destination. Knights of the Vale. Sir Matthews Wainwood growls as he can espy the slowly approaching group of heretics dispatching itself away from the rest of the main force. Even from this distance, it is pathetically obvious that those are the so-called Silver Knights of Rivendell. He wants to scoff internally at that. Like all good Knights of the Seven, he abhors the order of the Bastard of Rivendell, with their requirements that you have to be a bastard in order to join and not swearing to the Seven, but to the heathen gods of wind, tree, and stone. It practically, after all, spits on everything about being a true knight, blessed by the Seven. When the call for the First War of the Faith happened, Matthews is one of those who answered the call as his faith demands. He is also one of the lucky ones to be able to escape the carnage that is now the Forbidden Forest. He can still recall that day when abominations and monsters from out of wood, stone, and air ripped good men limb from limb while feasting on their blood. He lost 2 brothers, a lot of his friends, and a dozen cousins from different houses then. Now here he is again, ready to avenge the long-awaited destined death. He plans on the heathens that worship such demons. Around him, he can hear the rest of the knights whispering in anger, and he can't fault them. The bastardized Order of Knights of Rivendell are slowly approaching them on foot. It is a great insult. When they first set out under the orders of the rather suspectingly mad Lady Arryn to avenge her precious friend, Padir Baelish, who is dead, the Knights of the Vale have been expecting that they would be going lance to lance against the Silver Knights Order. While the young knights see it as a chance to show off their prowess and merit, the older ones know that it would be a grueling fight. Despite the golden opportunity to put the bastards in their place and show them how real knights fight, none after all can deny their merit and skill. They have single-handed pacified the 7 kingdoms after the attempted assassination of the bastard Lady of Rivendell, which is such a shame she survived, whence the kingdoms are a thread away from full-blown chaos. Now here they are, walking towards them on foot. It is as if they are being given a slap to the face, saying that they are not even worth riding against. It stings at his pride greatly, and it is taking all his self-control to teach the bastards a lesson. Lord Royce, the de facto leader of this expedition, has specifically stated that there be no impromptu charge, and Matthews agree with him. The Lady Deiana is a veteran of battles which she all won by cunning and tactics. Howsoever this battle would end, Matthews would bet his family sword that it would not end before the cunning deviant springs some ungodly surprise on them. Lord Royce, 7 bless his soul, also anticipated this and has sent outriders beforehand to scout out the open terrain. The last thing they need, after all, is a wet patch where a cavalry charge be proven disastrous. The scouts, however, repeat nothing of interest to report other than the fact that it is dry ground all over due to the dry spell that the summer is bringing. If one would look at it, all in all, it is almost a perfect setup for the Knights of the Vale. An open field where they can use their cavalry to full effect. Their enemy is on foot, and underestimating them, they outnumber said enemy, and there is only one of those flying monstrosities above the sky that can be seen. The end result is a lot of Vale Knights itching to ride over their once traditional enemy who has so greatly humiliated them before. The fact that Jon Royce doesn't give the order to charge is causing a lot of unhappy murmurs all over the front ranks, especially their enemy is, after all, right there in front of them, ready to be served in a silver platter. Matthews himself desires nothing more than to spur his horse to a gallop and bring the might of the Vale Knights to the pretenders in armor. Only the wariness of the Lady of Rivendell's schemes is giving him pause, at least until arrows started falling like rain all over them. Horses and men scream out in panic and fear. Many a squire fell dead as they have their helmets off and the arrows find easy pickings. Men are thrown off their horses, and more than one is accidentally trampled to death by his own horse, or a panicking one of his comrade. Still, majority of the arrows find little purchase, either missing or bouncing off metal plates of the knights. At least dozens are dead, and many more are wounded. It is the last straw that snapped the patience of the Knights of the Vale. For the Vale, Fort the Seven charge. One of the knights roared, and before the Bronze Lord can stop it, the roar sweeps up from one throat to the other, and in a matter of seconds, a full-blown charge has risen as knights urge their horses towards their hated foes. For the Vale, Matthews can hear himself roaring with the rest as his horse carries him forward through into glory. Knights of the Silver Wings Order. Liam Mord has always seen his position as Grand Master of the Order as the highest of privileges. Once he has been an initiate, but now he is in charge of the finest men that Westeros has to offer. They are all of different blood, but they are bastards. All brothers in soul through sheer experience and distrust imparted to them thanks to the sins of their fathers. The Order, however, made them brothers in all but blood. Not everyone can survive the ordeal of being a Knight of the Silver Order. They have to crawl, drown through blood and sweat to be able to survive and transform to one of the most respected to live with the name. They have to shed all that they are and be reborn as something new. As the words of the Lady Deiana inscripted on their majestic hall, they shall be my finest warriors, these men who have given themselves to me. Like clay I shall mold them, and the furnace of war forge them. They will be of great will and strong muscle. By the finest armor I shall clad them, with the most deadly weapons found they shall wield against the foe. They shall be above plague and disease. Sickness they shall endure. They will have tactics, strategies, and the finest horses that no foe can best them in battle. They will be the wings against the terrors outside our majestic land. They are the defenders of Rivendell and its lady. They are my knights, and they shall know no fear. They have proven it again and again on each and every encounter from the Great Battle of the Faith till today. Right now, as he sees almost half the Valemen charging towards them in full gallop, none of them hesitates, none of them break rank. Any lesser men-at-arms or even a knight might have tucked tail and ran already. It is folly, after all, to face a full head-on charge out in the open, riderless and with no spear or pike to stop the enemy cavalry from trampling you or skewering you with one of their lances. Right now, none of him or his men have a long-armed weapon, only sabers and the occasional pike, cudgel, or sword. His lady has ordered it, so, to his credit, none of his men ran or break rank even as the enemy approaches. The lady has not been specific as to why that is her orders that they face the enemy as they are right now. The only reassurance that they have is that she has a plan, and they'd be assured of that fact. Now he watches the very angry Valemen come closer and closer to his men, enraged as they are, due to the rain of arrows, pelting them. Is he afraid? Yes, he is. But it is the nature of a Silver Knight to stand firm and to overcome fear. Everything has a purpose. Our Lady ordains it so, roars Leon Mord as he can literally see the whites of the eyes of his enemy coming close. He simply grits his teeth expecting the heavy, powerful hits that would come from an enemy knightly charge. He never receives it, though. With surprise shouts and exclamations of surprise and horror, the entire enemy charge suddenly starts slipping and sliding with men being thrown off their horses in alarm. The reason for it is becoming pathetically obvious. The once hard ground and dirt are now muddy and sogging wet. The worst thing that could happen to a cavalry charge, horses are balking all over and knights are screaming as their mounts throw them off to the ground. All in all, it is a disaster for the charge. The ones at the back of the charge are forcing the ones at the front forward even more, and those that have the minimum amount of success at putting their mounts to a halt are being pushed onward to the disaster that is the making. In the matter of minutes, Almost 10,000 men are skidding and losing their feet as their heavy armor encumbered them. Many are already unmoving, courtesy of death through falling off a horse in full plate, or being trampled, while a large number are moaning in pain as they try to crawl through the mud and wet earth. Contrary to popular belief, it is extremely unhealthy to outright dangerous to lose your seat out of a full galloping horse, unlike the movies where one simply regains his footing and go on fighting with only a elusive breathe. Tears erupt all over the line of the Knights of the Silver Order as the Vale men stumble around helplessly. Bellamord only smirks inwardly, despite knowing very well that it is their lady's doing. For starters, the Knights of the Vale would usually never fall for such an obvious trick. They, alongside Rivendell scouts before the start of the battle, have already scoured nearly every inch of the battlefield for the possibility of wet surfaces. The scouts have found not an inch of wet ground, thus to have suddenly such a large muddy area, there is only one person who can do such miracles for that. She has done it once. She has done it again. The Lady Deiana and the old gods have come through for us again. Now it is our time to do our part. For Rivendell. For our pride and joy. Charge. Leomord roars out, leveling his sword at the mud-covered Knights of the Vale, trying and failing to regain their footing. With an animalistic roar, the Knights of the Silver Order fell upon the unprepared, and exposed Knights of the Vale with a savagery that can barely be seen. The Knights of the Vale are probably the most pious, after all, to the faith of the Seven when it comes to the Andal kingdoms of Westeros, and the Seven are probably the ones who have the most beef when it comes to bastardry. In a sense, a large portion of the misery suffered by a majority of the Knights of the Silver Order is thanks to the religion that the Vale fervently believed in. Thus, it is no surprise that they spared no effort on felling down the poor bastards. Weapons land on the poor fools trying and failing to get their bearings in order. The few lucky sods that manage to either retain their seats or pull themselves back are pulled down to the muddy ground. Unlike the Knights of the Vale, the Silver Order Knights are lightly armored thanks to the enchants waved by the Green Men. Their weapons are also designed more for melee, with sabers, short swords, dirks, knives, and maces designed to break through armor. The Knights of the Vale, on the other hand, are using cavalry-designed weapons with a hand-and-a-half long swords, lances, and the occasional battle axe. With a horse, they are dangerous weapons, but here in the mud, they are less than useless. Silver Knights, with knives and dirks, targeted the many premium targets of screaming Valamen, writhing on the mud, unable to get on their feet. Weapons are jammed up bungholes, spaces within the plate armors, and mostly at the visors of the helmets. Those who broke their weapons by accident on trying to cut through the metal plates simply contented themselves by drowning their enemies on the mud. Many a struggling knight also has their neck broken by feet, accidentally stepping on their heads as they struggle and scream. A few more invented members of the Silver Knights have taken into using helmets scattered all over as missiles by throwing them at Valamen who are atop their horses. All in all, it is a bloody massacre, and though the struggle claims the life of a Silver Knight here and there, hundreds are dying by the seconds in the side of the Vale. It is becoming obvious, if the prone, unmoving forms of metal-plated knights are any indication, as Leomord saws the neck of a screaming squire covered in blood and mud. The thundering of horses makes him look away from his grisly work. His countenance turns grim. It seems the rest of the Knights of the Vale are making their move already. Up above the air, Deiana laughs loudly, if rather evil, as she sees the decimation of almost half of the Valemen down below. It seems so easy. A bit of timed runes here and there to receive and rebound magic, and with a slight bit of transfiguration, and voila, muddy ditch. It seems so easy, so simple for even the most basic of magic to be used and change the course of thousands of lives. The sound of thundering hooves, once more, however, makes her turn her eyes to the rest of the half-remaining Knights of the Vale, who are turning to a full gallop towards their archers. She's not surprised at all. It is a classic move, after all, here at Westeros and taught to every High Lord, cavalryman, when the opportunity presses itself, would target the lesser armored and vulnerable archers or infantry. There is also the fact that most of them probably have a brother, cousin, or a friend currently being cut to pieces by the Silver Knights. They are raring for vengeance. Of course, they can't stupidly and unwillingly charge on the muddy battlefield at the front. Thus, they circle it and target the next best thing, the archers and the remaining reserves. which are the knights under Rivendell's domain, and the Death Dealers posing as archers. In a normal battle, it would be a tactically sound situation. Any commander would panic at such a quick maneuver of horse. Magic, however, changes the board. Not only does it change the pieces, but rather it juggles it and throws it overboard. As the Velamin covers the distance between them and the thin line of archers and reserves, the men below axe with a shout of "now" from Sir John. Everyone grabs the hidden pikes covered in dirt and leaves specifically to hide them. In the span of seconds, the Velamin are facing a wall of wooden sharpened spikes, another worst nightmare of a full-on cavalry charge. It is not the spikes, however, that claim the first blows. No. Rather, it is the disillusioned ground covered in stakes, and like before, the ground also turned to mud, with panic screams. Horses and men die as they fell on their death by the dozens in the first second. Many try to put on the brakes, but once more the charge prevents that as their fellows push them forward to their doom. The charge breaks as the once massed ranks break apart, as men force their horses to jump over the death traps and straight to the jaws of the pikes. Horses stumble and skid, throwing their riders straight to the pikes, who either skewers them or turns them to bloody men with holes. Gangways, however, that Deiana pre-prepared are crowded by knights as they try not to fall to the deadly spikes at their right or left. Skidding and slipping knights, however, are claimed by the stranger, as those at the front face the spears and pikes of the Death Dealers who strike at the very opportune moment of chaos. Many are already shouting about how it is a trap even as more knights force their horses to jump over the deadly stakes and their writhing and dying brethren. The muddy ground, however, and the sudden deceleration force the charge to a grinding halt. Like all charges, a cavalry's best offense is its full tilt charge, where the horse's immense size can trample and break enemy formations, with knights protecting them at the back. Stuck, however, in a cantering pace in their efforts not to fell, the knights at the back are easy target for the forces of Rivendell to pull down their horses. As if to add fuel to the fire, archers at the back pick up their bows and in unison, fired point blank at the mass of nervous knights at the edge of the ditches. Panicking, they of course try to find a way around the front line of spikes and ditches, only to fell in even more disillusioned ones, repeating the bloody process all over. Some are becoming wiser and are getting off their horses to engage in foot combat. The thing is, it is too late though. There are too few of them, and as the army of Deiana pushes forward, they are being isolated one by one versus the more well-ordered ranks of Rivendell. Trusting her men to finish the battle without her, Deiana turns her attention to the remaining riders at the opposite side. Despite the charge, after all of the remaining Velamen, a small group have been left behind, not afar off from where the battles or massacres are commencing. She smirks as she zeroes in on them. Her men have done their part in this battle. It is time for hers. With a simple nudge of her legs, Godric goes from hovering in the air to diving down before his wings tucked beneath him. The Gryphon has been on edge ever since the start of the battle, the anticipation of finally releasing his strength, making him taut as a bowstring. Now, with Deiana giving him the green light, he charges forward with all the strength and speed that made him the leader of his herd. As said before, Griffons are not like dragons. They are not the blunt hammer that would be used to smash an army to splinters. No, they are daggers poised to strike when a vulnerability shows itself. Solid, small, quick, and true. With a piercing shriek, Godric slams into the gathered riders surrounding the commandant banner of Bronze Yond Royce. It is as effective as lightning piercing through clouds as the orderly group of at least 20 riders. Men scream and panic as the Gryphon crashes into them, squawking and tearing. A wall of muscle, claws, and beak renting even the best armor. The once formed lines of the knights are scattered, giving off a clearing which Deiana jumps onto. A gloss immediately jumps off from its sheath and the spear goes into her hands. She has to admire Valyrian steel, despite the common knowledge that it never dulls and can be sharp as hell. The true secret of the thing lies in the fact that it can carry an ungodly amount of enchantments. In short, it is designed to be powered up by magic of every kind, even dragon fire. As it is, the pointy end of the spear lands on the toes of an off-balanced squire. His screaming is cut short as the spear cuts him from chin to brain. A knight tries to attack her, only to have the spear cut through his breastplate, the heavy plate failing to protect him at all. A friend of his roars as he charges at Deiana's other side, but the butt end of the spear parries his sword strike before a swipe that brings with it intestines and bloody tissues swipes through his throat, adding even more crimson splashing over the air. Behind her, Godric does his own bloody work, pouncing over running knights, horses. Those unfortunate enough to be catched by the giant half-lion, half-eagle hybrid are subjected to a whirlwind of beaks, claws, and muscle strength of the Gryphon. For something so large, Godric has the dexterity of a snake as he lunges and paws. The giant beak plucks man after man, as easy as one would a weed, leaving nothing but bloody, mauled pieces of metal, bits, and flesh. In the span of less than 5 minutes, the retinue of 20 full armored knights plus accompanying squires are strewn all over the face, their dead bodies staining the green grass, crimson. Covered in bits and pieces of man, Deiana smirks as she levels his spear at the shivering form of bronze Jon Royce on the ground, lacking his left arm. Now, Lord Royce, I guess we can negotiate a surrender, can't we? She simply speaks, leveling the pointy end of her spear at the exposed chin of the Lord of Runestone. The Eerie, the Vale. The sound of bells tolling at the main hall of the Eerie can be heard. For the residents that work and call the Eerie home, it is a common occurrence ever since the majority of the lords went off to war. The Lady Arryn, or as some of the servants call her, the Mad Arryn, due to the woman's tendency to rave and rant with the way she talks and walks, plus her abysmal way of running the castle as Lady Arryn. It is her tendency, rather, to throw suspicious men on the moon door, whom she believes is a threat to her precious sweet Robin, which is the reason for the bells. The woman has ordered that the bells be rung every time she throws someone down. It is apparently to remind everyone not to dare threaten her precious son. Of course, it is unsaid that majority of the poor blokes being made to fly are rather innocent schmucks who caught the paranoid eye of the mad woman. Right now, however, it is different. There among the crowd of onlookers, a combination of small folk, minor nobles, and landed knights, a white hooded figure stands like would any onlooker, with precise movements. The figure pushes man after man, heading to the center, where the moon door awaits, and where the Lady Arryn stands with her bodyguards. Barely than 10 meters away, and the odd figure is picked out by one of the Arryn guards as suspicious, who immediately shouts, while pointing a finger at his direction. The figure simply moves fast, exchanging stealth to speed as he pushes man after man to the side, closing the distance quickly between him and his prey. Within seconds, he clears out of the crowd of onlookers. One of the Arryn guards gets in his way, but the crossbow at his back goes to work immediately planting a quarrel on his throat. Another guard tries to stop him by leaping at him, but he simply sidesteps and pushes the man away before finally leaping over the last man, where he gets to become eye to eye with his panicking target. Using the last man's back as a jump board, the figure goes airborne, looming over the panicked-looking Lady Arryn as the figure shadows her for a split second, its left arm poised. With a mechanical click, a hidden blade appears. The left hand slams into Lysa Arryn's neck, the weight of the man slamming her also down on the cold, hard ground. Everyone is in silence as the left hand is pulled out, showing the crimson staining, the steel. His right hand almost solemnly closes the eyes of the dead woman, as would a monk in a prayer. It is absolute silence as everyone's brain try to comprehend what their eyes have seen, a successful assassination in full view at the morning. Just as the first of the guards open their mouth to shout, the assassin is already sprinting and with arms wide open on the left, and the right jumps down like a diver onto the open moon door and free-falling in the air. None could see the absurd large amount of hay stacked below for him to land on. Alternate ending for the leap of faith. The rest of the hidden ones watch as their comrade Alistair makes the faithful jump from the moon door. Everyone oohs and ahs to add more epicness to the scene. He flies like an eagle, dives like a crane. Spot. Bones, tissues, and bits of pieces of Alistair are scattered as he missed the large hay target where he is supposed to land. Now whatever that is left of him, white robes and all with limbs askew in odd angles in a puddle of crimson, are lying motionless a few feet away from his intended landing zone. The sounds of a raven cawing and laughter can be heard in the background. The Grandmaster simply sighs as he rubs off one eyeball sticking off his hood. By under no means will we tell Our Lady about this. Everyone attending simply nods in morose silence. To her ladyship. Lady Olenna Tyrell. In the name of her grace, Princess Myrcella Baratheon, daughter of the late Robert Baratheon, King of the Andals, and the First Men, may there be peace and prosperity between our houses. My Lady Myrcella does not view the Reach as an enemy, and would like to extend to your house the gift of peace. As you must already have heard, my lady's forces have crushed the armies of the usurper, Joffrey the reincarnation of the Mad King, and that of Stannis, the dour stag, the Westerlands, and the Stormlands have already bent the knee, and so does the East after the assassination of the Lady Arryn and the massacre of their forces. Dorne has also pledged its support, and that also of the North with the Riverlands to my lady's claim. We have no ill will against you, and my lady is reluctant to add even more damage to the realm. In exchange for your support and the cessation of hostilities, my lady offers the title of Prince Consort to Sarah Loras Tyrell and the position of Lady-in-Waiting to the Lady Margaery. However, if you accept, the Reach in supporting the former usurper Renly Baratheon would be penalized by paying for the crown's debt fully after the final discussions. Signed, Lady Deiana Tully, Lady of Rivendell and all its territories. Olenna Tyrell places the letter received from the former bastard of Tully to the table. It has caught everyone from Highgarden unawares when an envoy from Rivendell comes knocking on their front door, bringing her this letter. Now here she is, sitting at the veranda with her family surrounding her as they take turns reading the letter of the Lady of Rivendell. This gives time for Olenna to think. Long story short, her house has been given the short end of the stick during this slugfest for the Iron Throne. Personally, she has not supported this charade of supporting Renly. By the laws of gods and men, Renly is the second-born son, someone that would never be inheriting the birthright of Robert's children and older brother, unless Joffrey, Tommen, and Myrcella suddenly drop dead and Stannis suffers an unfortunate accident. Before she realizes the sudden change in status quo, though, Robert croaked dead alongside Stark, with the reincarnation of Aerys plopping his crazed behind on the throne of his father. Worse, Loras comes riding back from King's Landing with Renly in tow. At first, Olenna has thought that her grandson and his not-so-secret lover simply here taking refuge from Joffrey. She is totally blindsided when they start whispering in her dolt of a son's ear what a good idea would be for Renly to be the one to ascend the throne due to people loving him. Her buffoon of a child, unfortunately, goes along with it together with the rest of the Reach lords and ladies. The fools do not even realize that by putting Renly's ass on the Iron Throne, they would set a precedent of rebellions all over Westeros, of younger spares, trying to usurp heirs due to whatever reason they might come up with. With how fast the Reach marshaled its strength, Olenna has to give it to Renly and her grandchild. They might be idiots, but they are extremely likable idiots, and many gathered to Renly's banner in support. Her son also weds Marguerite to the Fool to strengthen the ties of the Reach to the crown. How Renly plans to put an heir to her granddaughter, knowing very well the man's preferences, gods only know. Olenna herself simply has to go with the flow. As the Reach marshals for the younger Baratheon, in a way she has been outmaneuvered by her son on this insane plan of his. One of his rare moments, she has to hand it to him. To confront him now and make known her opinions would only be bad. In this troubled times, the last thing that Olenna needs is for the world to see a divided House Tyrell. Then that's where everything goes to shit, as far as she can see. A shadow demon with Stannis' face murders Renly, though. Many might argue it is just a simple assassin. The end, however, is obvious. The Storm Lords who have pledged their allegiance to Renly immediately breaks camp and leave to swear to Stannis, leaving the Reach Lords high and dry, confused and kingless. They're an army without a king and a purpose. Her granddaughter also becomes freshly widowed, and Laura nearly lost his life when he tries to duel Brienne of Tarth, who is accused of negligence in protecting King Renly. All in all, they are in a bind. Now the War of Kings is coming to an end with what it seems to be the Princess Myrcella, the announced heiress to the throne, coming victor, beating odds everywhere. So we pledge to the Lady Myrcella Baratheon? Asks Willis Tyrell, her eldest grandson, breaking the ice of silence. She's certainly better than the remaining candidate, which is Joffrey, Loras grumbles out. He is still in the recovery stage about the death of his lover, and Olenna makes a note to address his mannerisms once they are alone. A woman, however, in the Iron Throne, this is the first time in the entire history of the Seven Kingdoms. Last time this happens, it caused the Dance of Dragons, which nearly ripped the realms in half, draws her oath of a son. Surely you can't plan for us to declare for Joffrey father, exclaims the heir of Highgarden. The Westerlands are reeling on their defeat and leaderless, The Vale is at the cusp of civil war with the Lady Arryn dead and the current lord a suckling boy. The Stormlands have all but surrendered. The North, the Riverlands, and Dorne have already pledged allegiance to the princess. The only supporters of Joffrey is the Crownlands, and it is a very loose support if the king's tendency to kill random people in the most hideous ways is any indication. I'm just saying, she is a girl, her brother is a boy. It is obvious by tradition who should be sitting in the throne. My son Huff's the Lord of Highgarden. Mace! Yes, mother. Shut up! Of course, mother. Olenna sighs as she massages her wrinkled forehead before looking at her brighter members of her family as they finish taking in the contents of the letter. So, what do you think? She asks them. I don't know, grandmother. It seems good enough. It would be all up for Loras, however, if we say yes to this. Margaret speaks out, looking at her older brother, who grimaces. I miss Renly, but I would do my duty on this, he sighs. Olenna simply hmms in response. Her grandson might be a sword swallower, but he takes his duties rather seriously when it comes to their family enough. The title, however, grandmother at the letter, says Prince Consort, why asks Willis, emphasizing the words penned in the letter. It should be King Consort, seeing that she would be the future queen. Maybe because she hasn't been properly coronated yet, answers Olenna. She still calls herself princess, after all, instead of queen. Either way, she is the only option for Highgarden right now. There's no good aligning ourselves with the boy king right now at King's Landing. The last thing that our house needs right now is to be named on the same sentence as the reincarnation of the Mad King. It doesn't matter if she has a cunt instead of a cock between the legs, as long as she can bring stability to the madness that is currently plaguing us all now. The Seven Hells would also freeze over before we even consider supporting that grasping fool at Pike. This is the only path our family can take, and we go with it, despite the rather unorthodox circumstances right now. We can always declare for ourselves like the Gardener Kings of old, suggests Mace suddenly. Mace? Yes, mother. Shut up! Of course, mother! Olenna just huffs as she wriggles to a more comfortable position that would not stress her old bones. Mace is an idiot for even suggesting it. The Tyrells are not as secure in their position as overlords of the Reach for years. Like the Tullys, they don't enjoy the traditional support of their lords like the Starks, the Martells and the Aarons, the wealth of the Lannisters, the royal blood connection of the Baratheons. Instead, it has always been the support of the Targaryen crown that keeps bloodhound rival houses like Hightower and Redwyne at bay, which needs to be placated, else their agendas might clash with that of House Tyrell. Pledging, however, to Myrcella Baratheon is risky. While the prince is indeed competent in her own way, Olenna is acute enough to see that the majority of her success is because of the support of the Lady of Rivendell. She's got a nagging feeling that despite Myrcella taking the throne of her father, it would be the former bastard who would be controlling everything in the shadows. She has nothing against the former bastard, especially with all her success and miracles. The young woman is powerful, ambitious, and cunning to boot. The fact remains, however, that she is a former bastard, and that leaves something nasty in Olenna's tongue. Still, what can they all do for that way is the only positive way that would probably not lead to ruination. So Loras, I guess all is in your shoulders now, grandson. Our family's future rests on your hands, says Olenna, looking at the young man. I will not fail our family grandmother, he bows. Good. Now tell those summer nights, blundering around like ducks, about the decision that we are taking, and make sure to send an envoy to our new liege's camp. The Tyrells will stand with Princess Myrcella on her quest to the Iron Throne. Edge of the Crownlands, road to Osgiliath. So tell me, Uncle, this Lady Myrcella, is she really as beautiful as they say they are? Asks Princess Arianne, looking at her uncle. The current heiress of Dorne is here for one and one reason only, to commit the pledge, the service of Dorne to the already obvious victor of the War of the Kings. Normally hell would freeze over before any of the Martells would dare bow to a Baratheon. This spawn of Robert Baratheon, however, seems cut from a different cloth from any of her two families. Everyone at Dorne, after all, have heard of the rather inglorious end of the mountain that rides after Prince Oberyn Martell, who is getting well known as the Mandalorian, killed him. He had brought the cut-off head of the ugly brute that murdered her aunt in the most heinous way with him when he returned to Dorne. He also brought with him a certain Amory Lorch, all gift-wrapped and ready. Her father, Doran Martell, had been so ecstatic of having in his hands the men who was responsible for murdering members of his family that he granted Oberyn the 5,000 needed to raid the supply lines of Stannis in support of Rivendell in the War of the Kings. Now with the conclusion that the War of the Kings would be won by Myrcella Baratheon of all people, it's setting the first ever precedent of a woman successfully winning the obstacles to the Iron Throne. Her father has given her specific orders that Dorne, with Oberyn's help, be able to get into the good graces of the next monarch before she takes her seat. If possible, her brother Quentyn might even be betrothed if the opportunity arise, marking the next generation of kings with Dornish blood on them. Eerie has no idea what changed her father's perspective about even deciding that his own blood would intermingle with that of the spawn of Robert Baratheon. However, after a rather drunken session with her uncle Oberyn with some of that Rivendell fire whiskey he brought with him, and drowning Lorch again and again for amusement at the Water Gardens is enough for her father to do a 360 in his decisions. Or it might be because of the new angle her father is playing at. She knows through her own spies that the plan of her father regarding the Targaryens had failed. Epically, her soon-to-be-betrothed Viserys Targaryen got himself killed. Apparently the moron thinks himself above laws and has drawn a sword at the Dothrak, the sacred city of the Dothraki. He gets a golden molten crown for that. Her sister Daenerys, on the other hand, seems to style herself a defender of the people after Ser Barristan, the Bold, who was kicked out of Joffrey's service for being old pledged himself to her. Of course, first thing he did was to slay the spy, Jorah Mormont, replacing him as the Queen's personal protector and advisor. Now, due to his influence, Daenerys is playing good ruler overseas at the ruined city of Astapor, trying to make ends meet. Apparently, not even having 3 full-grown dragons is enough to make Slavers Bay cooperate, as she is besieged with local and international problems in keeping Astapor together. She would not be ready to return to Westeros in the next decade or two, based on what her spies report. As a result, the only way forward is to coordinate with the one most likely to win the throne, who is conveniently, they are also in good terms with. It is a plus that her uncle is already acquainted with them and established a foothold. Arianne, however, wonders about the angle she can make with her coming. She has heard that the Lady of Rivendell has a female concubine. Maybe she would be prone to female seductions. Interesting. I wonder if she would be interested in the bed. Arianne simply ponders as her carriage continues to move. Rhaenys would like to pride herself that she has seen the many faces of her best friend. They have, after all, grown up side by side, glued to the hip under the tutelage of the Lady of Rivendell. She has seen happy Myrcella, sad Myrcella, crying Myrcella, and might she say so, pre- and post-sex Myrcella. This is the first time, however, that she has seen Myrcella wearing her very angry face as she whacks heedlessly at the training pole set up behind her tent by the death dealers protecting her. Sella, Rhaenys calls out, seeing her friend with gritted teeth hacking furiously, ignoring the bits and pieces of wood clinging to her. Kella, she barks out this time, and as she expects, Myrcella shouts in frustration before wildly slashing at her target again. This time, however, Rhaenys jumps in, catching her blade with her own, before pushing her off. Venting your frustrations at the wooden pole isn't exactly therapeutic, Sella. It can't fight back, says Rhaenys, readying herself with her dual blades. Have it me. Myrcella's mental state obviously as bad as she expects it to be, as her usual demure friend, who would not hesitate to pause her horse to avoid riding over a kitten, charges at her with a wild cry. Rhaenys meets her charge with her own blades. She stands firm like an indomitable barrier as her friend attacks her with her sword. Myrcella might be competent in wielding a blade as her station should, against someone like Rhaenys, though, who inherits the skills of the Sword of the Morning, it is nothing. Add the fact that her friend's mental state is rather off. Her attacks are heavy but exceptionally simple, easy to predict, and easy to parry. In the span of 5 minutes, she has her friend panting, and without a sword as one of her counters, finally throws the blade off a sweating and panting Myrcella's hands. Enough of this. You are tired. Come to the bath with me, Rhaenys chides. Making sure to take the practice 20 sword Myrcella has on the floor before throwing it at a death dealer to put back. Without wasting any more time, she pulls the princess with her to the large royal tent, where Yasmina has them strip off their sweaty leathers to the warm bathtub. Rhaenys relaxes under the soothing touch of the water, and as usual, Myrcella reclines on her. The heiress to the Iron Throne is incredibly touchy, and Rhaenys would not deny her a bit of skinship, especially in her rather sensitive state. Why would she want me to marry that prick when she has said already yes to be betrothed to me? Myrcella finally asks in a broken voice, making Rhaenys sigh as she rakes her hands over her best friend's hair. Suffice it to say, things have been rather complicated the past few days. The victorious armies of Prince Jon Snow of Dol Amroth and the forces of Limord and the Silver Wings Knights Order finally reintegrate themselves back, bearing their good fortune. However, with it come letters bearing the seal of Deiana, who apparently needs to deal with something and is not present. The contents tell about the induction of Sir Loras Tyrell to be Prince Consort, and in return, pull the Reach back to the fold without any more fighting. It is a good plan, seeing everything that the Reach could offer and what a problem they would become if they are hostile. The only hiccup is that Myrcella is not taking it well. Maybe there is something more than what you might imagine, Sella. I know how much you and Our Lady loves each other, if only because you seem to be eating each other's face off every night. Rhaenys only laughs as her friend turns cherry red in reminder of hers and Deliana's nightly activities. Sometimes with Rhaenys or Yasmina included. She only kisses the back of her friend's head before hugging her to her. She fervently hopes inside, however, that Deliana does not make the decision on messing with Myrcella's heart. Rhaenys would never forgive her if she does. Their moment of silence and contemplation, however, is broken, as Yasmina enters with a curt bow. "Forgive me, my ladies." There's a messenger outside who says that a group of scouts have found the Prince Tommen Baratheon wandering around in the woods and have brought him here.
Outside the royal pavilion.
Prince Tommen Baratheon is not a happy prince. In fact, it's more that he's scared as the large men wearing black scale armor glares down at him, making him feel like a rat being cornered by hungry wolves. He only gulps as he pulls Sarah Pounce-a-Lot and Lady Whitepaws to his muddy tunic at the chest, taking comfort in their meows and soft fur. As far as you can recall, Tommen has always been afraid in his entire life. Joffrey tends to bully him every chance he can get as they grow up, and his father barely sees him. It is better when her sister Myrcella is there, for she is kind to him, but she soon left, leaving Tommen under the tender ministrations of Joffrey. Mother is always kind to him, but she favors Joffrey a lot that he tends to be alone all the time. Uncle Jaime is always fun to him, but he is a Kingsguard and keeps his distance. This leaves Tommen all on his own. With the death of mother and father, things have worsened for Tommen. King Joffrey now lords his position over him and tends to go into great detail how he would have their sister drawn and quartered for daring to rise up against him. This frightens Tommen, of course, especially since Joffrey would have his guards make an example in front of everyone to make his point. Tommen misses Myrcella, his sister, and her kindness. The reason why he is in this predicament, however, is because Sir Pounce and a Lady Whitepaws, without warning last night, start tugging at him and making him chase them to a secret tunnel at the Red Keep. Before Tommen knows it, he is lost, and he has cried a bit before making the decision to follow his two cats in the tunnels, landing them somewhere in the woods. Of course, being lost, he continues to follow his pets for nearly half a day, hiding in sheer fright from a wandering bear, before finally being nabbed by these black armored men who dragged him none too gently in the middle of an army camp, bearing the sigils of House Baratheon, his house. Before Tommen could wonder if he is about to be drawn and quartered, as Joffrey tends to make him watch, the tent opens up, showing a very tall and mature version of his oldest sister, hair still wet, looking at him in astonishment. Tommen tries to call out before he has his lungs almost crushed by the bear-like hug of her sister, who is sobbing at the tunic of his neck. Somehow the fear deep inside him has finally stopped rearing its ugly head for now. Air above the capital, King's Landing. Deliana sniffs before vomiting as Godric flies him over the wretched city. For the life of her, she has no idea why anyone would live in this cesspool of a living area. Here she is, hiding in the clouds, yet she can smell the ungodly stench that is King's Landing even at this height. The unnaturalness of that smell must have been through generations that it even poisons the air above it. Deliana thinks, taking a sniff again before retching to the side, unable to bear the ungodly smell any longer. And Myrcella will rule from here? Fuck? It would take me a lifetime alone to get rid of this smell from attempting to strangle all of us to death by asphyxiation. With a quick application of a bubblehead charm to herself, she takes a deep breathe, her lungs finally heaving a sigh of relief from fresh air. The reason why she is here is because of her desire to test one of Rivendell's secret weapon stash early. Gunpowder. Deliana has absolutely zero desire to bring cannons or even guns at this age. Of course, primarily because gun-making is not in her past life's area of expertise, but also because she does not want the playing field leveled between muggles and magicals. There is also the simple fact that Westeros is not as enlightened as the 21st century humans. Knowing the idiots here, they would be massacring themselves to extinction. No guns, sir, in this timeline. Gunpowder, however, is another exception. The reason for this is simple. Somehow, that necromancer in the north is flexing his power quite strongly, and even she can feel his touch this far down south. That means that sooner or later, he would be marching that quite unfair undead army of his to the wall. She needs a little help from the destructive knowledge that her people amassed during the 21st century. The gunpowder is her solution. The reason, however, she is here hovering with 8 other Griffons is because she desires to do a trial run with the first batch of the powder the Green Men successfully synthesized. While she can do it anywhere, she reasons out that she might as well do it on King's Landing and save their invading force a little bit of effort. Plus, the Griffons at Rivendell are getting chubby and lazy. This side mission of hers would be good for them to stretch their wings a bit. Rising over the sleeping city below, Deiana finally makes the decision that the angle and wind is enough. With a pat at Godric's head, the giant Griffin screeches, making the other Griffins drop their giant bags in unison, each the size of a small room filled with gunpowder. She watches as they fall slowly to the ground, each having an exploding timer. And in 3, 2, 1, boom! Deiana counts as 9 different explosions rock the entire city like miniature bombs. Fire breaks out, and the eerie sound of screams can be heard above. Explosions confirmed. It works very well, alright, Deiana thinks to herself, looking at the wildfires below. Well, that's it. Time to go home and explain to Marcella that there is no way in hell I would be letting that Tyrell poof even lay a finger on her. She sighs, turning Godric to fly away from the city with the rest of the Griffins when another explosion erupts from the city. This one nearly blinds her as a green flash illuminates even the night as a veritable tide of green flames erupt like a snake all the way to the Red Keep and the Temple of the Seven. Green fire roars like a tidal wave engulfing everything in its way. The screams dying to a hush as the fires engulf all stone, flesh, and water. All disintegrates like dust. Within mere a minute, the capital of Westeros is all gone, except for ashes. A stunned Deiana simply sits there atop her Griffin, realizing that she has totally forgotten about the stashes of wildfire of old Aries, and one which Robert promptly forgets about. Last she remembers from the Hidden Ones, the alchemists are maintaining them. Her bombings must have caused secondary explosions, which led, well, to this. Oh, fuck me, she murmurs to herself. Well, this would be quite hard to explain to Marcella once she returns. 5 months after the end of the War of Kings, life ever since the rather anticlimactic end of the war slowly gains a vestige of normalcy to Westeros, with Joffrey the Mad Baratheon unexpectedly getting a fiery death via immolation with wildfire. The kingdoms finally have rest. The North consolidates its strength and power with the return of its lords and ladies, though out of all those that support the Lady Marcella's bid to power, they suffer the most with the deaths of at least 2 Starks during the War of Kings. The Lady Sansa got taken out during the unexpected explosion of King's Landing, and of course the betrayal of Robb Stark by Ramsay Snow. In the end, the new kingdom fell to the hands of Brandon Stark as the next in line. With how young he is, the Great John and a large number of Karstarks and Bear Islanders flood Winterfell to make sure that their next lord would grow up a Northerner. Catelyn Tully is pointedly shipped out, back to Riverrun, screaming and kicking. The East under the Veil barely clumps it together to avoid a civil war. Their rather large defeat in a humiliating manner humbles a lot of the Vale lords. However, with the sickly sweet Robin motherless and a suckling whelp, leadership remains ostentatious in the crags of the kingdoms. Ironically, only their shared fear of the mountain clans moving over their strongholds remains knitting the Vale together, especially with no Lord Paramount leading them. The West is literally devastated in all aspects. Strip-mined to a T almost by Jaime Lannister during his campaign against his niece in his brief tenure as Lord Paramount. The problems that Tywin hold back about mines of Casterly Rock drying becomes public information. Without the support of the business partnership set up by the Old Line with Rivendell, it descends into chaos as lords realize that they are buggered 7 ways to Sunday. Rebellions sprout all over, and Tommen, who ascends as the new Lord of the Rock, as Tywin's will reads, is inexperienced in dealing with it. Marcella, however, with the patronship of Lady Deiana, sends the Silver Wings Night Order to bring peace to the region, stabilizing it. The Riverlands, on the other hand, enjoys a new bout of prosperity under finally the rule of Lord Edmure Tully. The man has proven himself to his people very well during the war. The harsh and disciplined teaching of his father also turns him to a man that can be respected by both lords and common folk. His engagement to the Castellan of Rivendell, the Lady Amelia, is the highlight of his rule, so far attended by both halves of the splintered kingdom for the first time. The Southlands, on the other hand, is another matter. The Crown lands are much simpler to deal with. As always, they pledge themselves to whomever it is that won the Iron Throne. Sadly, there is no Iron Throne anymore, and surveyors from Rivendell are currently checking out the burnt land of King's Landing to be reclaimed by Rivendell and its territories. The Stormlands, on the other hand, is an interesting point. After being pulled this way and that in allegiance to both Renly and Stannis, the lack of a Baratheon to inherit it puts it into civil war with powerful lords, vying for the absent position of Lord Paramount. It might have gone on for years, if not for an unexpected hero. Looking like a miniature Robert Baratheon without the locks, Gendry, the blacksmith, bastard son of the late King Robert, appears with a bunch of followers of his own, and surprisingly, a young girl with a direwolf with her wielding a warhammer. He scours the Stormlands, putting down bands of lords and fights, earning allegiance after allegiance of the scattered Stormlords. He claimed the name of Baratheon by right of conquest after he puts down the Castellan of Storm's End, who announces himself as Lord of the Castle. There and then it is known that his companion is Arya Stark, whom he wastes no time announcing as his lady. Dorne is much simpler, due to the good terms it has with Rivendell, Prince Oberyn Martell, and the current heir. Princess Arianne Martell establishes the relationship between the two kingdoms. It is widely spoken, however, that the Princess of Dorne has intimate relationships with the Princess Myrcella and the Lady of Rivendell. It is an open secret, but no one actually says it out loud for reasons of common sense. The Reach, on the other hand, reorganizes itself and prospered after the wake of the wars. With Westeros proverbially half-starved, with kings taking the provender provided for winter with their armies. The breadbasket of the realm makes a killing filling the empty larders and granaries. Winter, after all, is fast approaching. Loras Tyrell, also with a large number of his knights, moved to Rivendell, where he would be inducted as Prince Consort of the realm. The Iron Islands, ironically, gets the worst end of the deal after the War of Kings. Balon Greyjoy, in his stupidity, has ordered his Ironborn to reave and pirate the entirety of Westerosi shores, while everyone is fighting one another. Now that the war ends and the Lord Paramounts take stock of the lands they rule, everyone is angry at the bitter old man at Pike. Thus, with direct orders from Myrcella and Deiana, Jon Stark, with his wife, sailed the swan ships of Dol Amroth with the entirety of the Redwyne fleet, and many other skiffs and ships once more lay siege to Pike, turning it to rubble. Balon Greyjoy gets a first-hand experience of being castrated before he is put into a catapult and launched to a nearby cliff. The Lady Yara is now Lady of all Ironborn after having one foot hacked off. Surprisingly, as the fleet is on their way home, they encounter the small armada of a returning Euron Greyjoy, whom they then decimated in good order before throwing him to the sharks. Rivendell, on the other hand, the unofficial 8th Kingdom of Westeros, publicly rests. It would after all be the new capital of Westeros, where the Princess Myrcella would be crowned. It catches the attention after all of everyone from Westeros to Essos when the Princess of the Realm announces that she would be marrying the Dame of Rivendell. Such a public match, an unexpected match, of course, causes a lot of ire, especially with the remnants of the faith and many lords who decry it as unnatural. Seeing, however, that they cannot be united with the Sept of Baelor, a pile of ashes at King's Landing, all they can do is bark and wag their tongues around. There is also the added fact that it is not wise to badmouth the victor of the War of the Kings. Thus, the protests are rather few. The Reach, of course, protests at first. They, after all, have expected that Loras Tyrell would be King Consort to Myrcella. Deiana Tully makes it clear that in the agreement, Loras would be Prince Consort, so that means he would be responsible in providing heirs with the Queen, but Myrcella would still marry Deiana Tully. At first, they are ready to protest, but with a little admonishing from the Queen of Thorns, unwilling to give up the possibility that the future heirs of Westeros would have Tyrell blood on them, majority of their banner lords acquiesced their protests. They, after all, realized that any powerful push on their part might force a change in decision. Right now, however, Rivendell is planning for the upcoming promotion of the Princess's Myrcella from Princess to Queen. Rivendell, Deiana's outside quarters. At one of the arches connecting to that of Deiana's common room quarters sits the circular inside pool that is a reminiscence of Roman bathhouses, with beautiful statues holding jars that serve as faucets for the circular pool at the middle of the open archway. Pink and blue transparent curtains cover the opening of the arches, giving the sunlight streaking in a color. Plants in beautifully crafted jars sits at the sides, specifically designed to give off sweet aromas that waft the entire area. Deiana has her own private space for bathing in her rooms, but this area has been frequented a lot, either by her and those closest to her throughout the years. Like, right now, all of them are present due to the upcoming coronation and nuptials of Myrcella and Deiana. They have, however, a plus one that, for some reason, successfully worms herself to their little group. This is life. How I survived without this all my years is beyond me. Bubbles Arianne Martell with a towel atop her head. Deiana smirks as she stares at the dusky-skinned young woman. Arianne Martell is crafty as a viper when she first introduces herself to her, and Myrcella as one of Dorne's delegation. She has to admit that she is cunning in her own right. A spiked food and drink, however, with loyalty potions, and the future heiress of Dorne has no qualms, pledging her kingdom's loyalty and friendship to that of hers. It, however, has an unintended effect as the curiosity of the princess turned to downward attraction for her specifically. Now here she is joining their little merry band of female group. Emilia is present with them right now due to Edmure and Hoster arriving early for this week's coronation and marriage. Rhaenys, of course, as usual, is present despite being reluctant at most of the times. The young woman takes little effort into being dragged with them into bed. Yasmina is as demure as ever, though she's reached her beauty's peak already with full hips and an hourglass body with a pretty face framed on a ponytail. She has to admit that the genetics carefully maintained for the concubines of UT are impeccable. Then there's Myrcella, of course, as beautifully glowing as the first day they met. All of them are rather skeptical of Arianne till the Dornish princess starts trying to go under their pants unashamedly, either alone or in a group. The things that Vixen can do with her body is unreal. Thus, after reluctant assurance of hers truly, the rest of her friends finally acquiesce that yes, they can trust the Dornish woman as long as she's regularly dosed with the loyalty potions till her mind changes. As if. Emilia snorts, floating on her back at the bath, her pale skin gleaming under the water. I seem to recall the architect completely confused when you asked him to design an empty hill. He completely gave up on it till you start yammering about where goes where. This is the genius of my beautiful betrothed, of course. Arianne, did you know that she's the one who planned out all this along with the architects? Points out Myrcella leaning at Deiana's side, her warmth palpable despite the steam of the bath. Please, Sella, all I did was to add a little something here and a little something there. The architect and the builders did all the rest. They're none too happy about it, though. Making a castle for a bastard. Being uppity, they call it. Oh? Rhaenys pants out her last word, as Yasmina is nibbling the side of her neck. I seem to recall you and Deiana here letting her do the same last 2 days before. Our Yasmina is very talented after all, replies Rhaenys with a smirk. Yes, you are not wrong about that. Especially the things she does with her tongue that... Oh, Myrcella glares at Deiana, who has pinched her side. Sella, enough about bed talk, she chides before looking at Rhaenys and Yasmina, and you two behave. You can fuck each other's brains out after we all have a bath. I don't want Arianne to be tempted to take it to another level. She throws an eye look at the Dornish princess, who has a predatory looking on her face, observing Yasmina and Rhaenys. You ruin all my fun, she pouts. You can join them later, sighs Deiana. Hey, I didn't invite her. I want some personal time with Yasmina here. Protest Rhaenys. I didn't recall you protesting when I joined in last time. In fact, you seem to enjoy it. If you calling my name to the high heavens is any proof. Ariane! Do you have to say that out loud? Squeaks a red-faced Rhaenys, who is now the subject of mischievous grins from the rest. Perlise, it's not as if everyone here doesn't have a taste of you already. You don't have to be shy about it. The Dornish woman flicks her long hair to the side. All right, you can join in. Just stop talking about it, please. Deiana laughs alongside everyone else at the embarrassed face of their secret Targaryen friend. Making sure the world knows about her name as Deiana the Great might be her main goal, but this might not be so bad at the moment. The Wall, Castle Black. Benjen, it's good to see you. Alive. I am sorry about Duncan Frost, Mary, and Lionwood. They're good men, declares Jar Mormont, as the grim Stark sits beside the fireplace. In the firelight, Jar can see he looks like he has aged 20 years since the last 2 months of ranging. That bad? He asks after the man takes a deep draught of water. He simply nods. I thought Sir Olisar would be joining us, he rasps out. He's currently straightening some of the boys who ganged up on the Lannister. Again? Again, sighs Jorah Mormont. Suffice it to say that since the War of Five Kings ended, floods of prisoners are sent to the Watch after being captured by their foes. Majority of them, of course, are those belonging to House Lannister, Vale, and the Bloody Iron Lands. Most infamous of their new recruits, however, is Jaime Lannister himself, the proud lion of the West, and probably the reason why the War of Five Kings kicked off. Long story short, a lot of people aren't happy with him. With him missing his right hand, they tend to whack him around due to their new phase in life as members of the Night Watch. The sound of a door creaking is enough to signify the arrival of Surras, Olisar Thorne, the dour and bitter man nodding his head at the two of them. Lord Commander, First Ranger. I am sorry I am late, he greets, taking a chair beside Benjen. 3 months ago, and the former Targaryen loyalist would rather have chopped his own dick than be cordial to the First Ranger. The Great Ranging, however, changed all that. Jaira had led almost 200 of his brothers to find out what the hell is happening. Up north, that wildling villages, both peaceful and violent ones, are disappearing. They got more than what they bargained for. The battle at the Fist of the First Men happened when the entire camp got invaded by dead men walking. The group had been pushed back with great loss, reducing their numbers of 200 to 40 men before they managed to break through and escape with their lives. Olisar and Stark are one of those men. So, what news of our king beyond the wall, Benjen? Are they still gathering at Hardhome? Sir Olisar asks. Hardhome is gone, Sir Benjen, and at least 80,000 wildlings are dead. The Night King got to them. It is a massacre. The declaration of Benjen sends a chill down Gior's old heart. They have been banking on the gathered numbers of the wildlings to deal a fatal blow to the army of the dead. To say that they have been defeated is terrible news. The Night's Watch has been gathering weapons and dragging glass from a small cave nearby where they can mine the thing. They have been meaning to drop them off to the wildlings and give them a chance to reduce the dead's numbers. It seems that they are too late. Is Mance also dead? He asks as Stark shakes his head. No, 20,000 escaped, the Massacre, mostly the old, women and children. They fled as the rest told off the army of the dead. They are heading here. I believe that they plan to ask for succor for us to open the gates. We need to open it for them, Lord Commander. An ashen-faced Sir Olisar speaks out, taking also a gulp of water. 80,000 already joined the army of the Night King. We cannot add another 20,000 to that. Despite knowing the change of the Bitter Knight's outlook on things, Gior can't help but raise an eyebrow at his words. He never thought he would hear those words coming from Sir fucking Olisar Thorne. Prince Consort's table. Loras has no idea about the table at first when he is first given it. Nothing about his lordly education. After all mentioned, anything about it. In fact, everything about Rivendell is new to him. The architecture, the way people talk and walk. It seems as if, for Loras, he has entered into a new world seen only in books. The people that is under Rivendell is different from the rest of Westeros, as far as he can tell. The divide between small folk and those at the upper echelons is narrow. The Reach might boast about being the granary of Westeros, but at the expense of their small folk. Lords and ladies would usually take the majority of the grain and leave only enough for their poor underlings to survive. At Rivendell, it is different. The small folk are called citizens, and they are divided into towns and homesteads, with each homestead having their own specialization and guard. There's also the fact that the citizens can keep majority of their produce to sell to merchants, lords and knights earning money while paying the tithe demanded by Rivendell and the due tax. It is so different from everywhere else where small folk are obligated to give off their produce to their lords, lest they be punished and their produce seized anyway by force. The table position assigned to Loras, he has to admit, suits perfectly to his gifts. Basically, he would be bridge and show of the royal family to the people. He would be mingling with them, listening to their woes, make friends of them, and in the worst case, help them on their troubles. It suits perfectly to his extremely likable persona. There is also the fact that he would be able to act out the knight that he is. Like all young boys, Loras dreamed of being a knight, a gallant warrior riding with people looking at him in awe while he serves justice and righteousness. Bitter truth snaps it, however, and he realizes too late that majority of the knights of Westeros are simply telltale legends with no sense of honor. Here at Rivendell, he would be able to realize that boyhood dream of his with no one to bark at him for doing it right. This truly is the land of dreams, as far as he is concerned. Rivendell, Deiana's private quarters. Marcella wakes in the middle of the night, missing the familiar warmth that usually hugs her from the side of the bed. Sighing, she wraps the blanket to cover her naked form before getting up from the bed and walking to the open veranda, where she can see her betrothed sitting naked as the day she is born, her long violet hair unraveled, floating in the wind. As always, Marcella wonders how lucky she is to be able to love someone like her, Delia, and be loved in return. Thinking again? She asks, walking to stand beside where Deiana is sitting. Down below, she can see the entire lights of Rivendell's territories shining in the distance. "Did I wake you, Sella?" asks Deiana, waving, her feet dangling into open air of the veranda. For the life of her, Marcella cannot understand how Deiana has zero fear of heights. "A little Delia, I miss your warmth in the bed," says Marcella, leaning to her side. "I am sorry, I'm just thinking I know," finishes Marcella. "I can't blame you, Delia. Our lives are about to change, both of us in the next few days. For what it's worth, I am sorry for dragging you with me on this twisting life of mine," she says. More than anyone, Marcella knows that despite the honor, prestige, and wealth that comes with royalty, it totally cancels off the possibility of a quiet and simple life, something that they have here in Rivendell before the death of her father. "You have nothing to be sorry for, Sella. It has been fun, despite the dangers," waves off Deiana. "Plus, there's also the sex, which is—" "Hush you," Marcella pats her lover's side. "I have enough talk about sex ever since Arianne arrives." "Sure, what do you want to talk about then, Chella?" asks Deiana. Marcella sighs, plucking her courage to sit beside Deiana in the veranda, despite her legs dangling in open air. The past few months, Deiana has been preparing for her coming ascendancy to queenhood. With King's Landing gone, Rivendell would be the capital of the Seven Kingdoms. Deiana also has taken great pains to make sure that her rule would be quiet, just, and as easy as possible. A lot of things has been changed. First of all is the creation of the judicial body, a Supreme Court only to be overruled by the monarch to deal with justice throughout the land under a set of rules that Deiana names the Constitution. As far as Marcella can tell, it contains all the major laws of Westeros that a judge can use to dispense justice. Each kingdom of Westeros has its own provincial judge, and below that, the city or town judges. The more serious the crime, the higher you go till you reach the Supreme Court. Gone are the days where lords would be the judges of the crown's justice. All would be below the Constitution, even the lords and ladies of the realm. Secondly is the formation of the Royal Inquisition. Unlike before, where a king relies on a master of whisperers and his council, trusting fervently that said council member is loyal and true, the High Inquisitor would take its place. Like the Knights of the Silver Wings, the Inquisition is in order. They are basically the eyes and the ears of the crown. For the Royal Inquisitors, no door would be closed to them during their investigations, except for that of the Lord Paramounts, where only the Royal Inquisitor and his retinue can. Punishment for those who dare to hurt an Inquisitor is an automatic death sentence. Court would also be limited to 5 days only per week, and only the important tasks not solved by the Supreme Court would be brought before the Queen. Other stuff like naming bastards and issues of title, inheritance, or land of course, would still remain the crown's responsibility. Other than that, a system has been included where she can be free and able to pursue her own interests while being fair. "Do you think I would be a good queen, Delia?" Marcella asks, looking down. She knows deep down, of course, that when it comes to push and shove, she would break. She's not as strong-willed, dutiful, or wise as either Ray, Amelia, or Deiana. Either of them three would make a good queen than her. Of course you won't, Sella, the curt answer of Deiana makes the beautiful blonde stare at her fiancé in disbelief. You'll be the best one that Westeros will ever see, she adds with a confident look, those green eyes piercing at Myrcella, eroding the self-doubt within her. You know, I tell her, why? The Cheshire grin appears at her face like a cat having its canary. You will be married to me? Please, Sella, what can you do without me? She pompously says. Despite herself, Myrcella can't help but laugh out loud with tears in her eyes. She promptly forgets that humility is not in her beloved's dictionary of character. What can I do, indeed, without you, my beloved Deiana? She recognizes the truth there, without shame or worry, even as she continues laughing. Rivendell, Fort Ronald. Olenna Tyrell harumphed as her carriage once more faces another road bump, shaking her old bones. Today is the day of coronation of the Princess Myrcella to be the next queen of the Seven Kingdoms. Olenna has attended her fair share of coronations. She was there when Rhaegar was crowned heir and crown prince of the Seven Kingdoms. She was there when Robert got the crown placed on his head. She was there during the declaration of the fat stag for his doe to sit on the throne after him. Yes, Olenna had seen many a coronation in her long life. This is the first coronation that she has attended, however, where she is not allowed to access to the main place where the coronation would be held. It is, after all, almost a tradition during celebrations for visiting lords and ladies to mingle in comfort and at the same time gain allies from the rest of the upcoming dignitaries. That tradition has been denied currently. With the former bastard kicking tradition left and right these past few years, it is not surprising. Olenna harumphed to herself as she looks at a lot of frowning faces at her retinue. A large number of lordlings and ladies of the Reach have followed here for the coronation. Opportunities such as this, after all, are rare and once of a kind. Any practical lord would see the advantage of being here if they can even get the flimsiest excuse to be present. Another incentive, of course, is the fact that the Prince Consort that would help provide an heir for the realm would be from their Lord Paramount.
Olenna still isn't happy about that. She nearly has a conniption when she hears that the Lady of Rivendell would be marrying the future queen, other than because it's nauseating to realize that the queen is a poof and an abhorrence to the faith of the Seven. Not that Olenna cared about religion, it riles up a lot of lords and ladies. The only reason that she didn't march in anger at Rivendell for the insult to her house of her grandson being denied the title King Consort as they expected is the letter of said grandson informing her that he's happy and content with his life at Rivendell, and a stern warning that they not cause trouble. Despite how she presents herself, Olenna does care for her son and grandchildren, despite them being dullards sometimes.
She has to admit the brilliance of such a move, though, from the Lady of Rivendell and the Queen. They timed it perfectly, where the rest of the realm can do more than sound out their protest by mouth only. With King's Landing gone and the unity of the faith of the Seven in the wind due to the destruction of the Sept of Baelor, no one can call them out on it. Once it might have been the pious Knights of the Vale, however, after their shameful defeat and the rather precarious position they are in right now, under the guidance of Sweet Robin, they can do nothing but grind their teeth. Speaking of which, the rest of the visiting dignitaries have been forced to camp outside of Fort Ronald till the celebration day. This results to a lot of grumpy lords forced to send their aides and servants to scavenge or find food in the nearest towns and hamlets. Now here, everyone is from Dorne to the Westerlands impatiently waiting the long line of the fort where they are inspected by those Blackguard soldiers before let in. Halt! A stern voice stops Olenna's ride, and she can see the doors forced open by two menacing-looking men in black armor. Oh, stop wasting my time, will you? I am an old woman, and I don't have daggers hiding under my skirt. My grandson would be Prince Consort, and I intend that no harm come to him, she snaps, even as the two continues on their rummaging and checking of the carriage, as if she hasn't even spoken. Clear? Clear? The other replies before nodding as they walk out the carriage, leaving harumphing Olenna alone as they finally let her pass. Inside, though, she's congratulating the Queen at the security. Bothersome or not, it is never wrong to be prepared in these troubled times. Fort Granger, entrance to the Riverlands. Hoster sighs as he can literally hear the grinding of Catelyn, his daughter's teeth, as they pass through the checkpoint that leads to Rivendell. Personally, she believes that his daughter is half mad. Every trouble it seems that she can think of, she places the blame at the Lady of Rivendell. The death of 2 of her children hit her especially hard, and of course she places the accusation that it is because of her half-sister that they are now not present in the realm of the living. He has done his best to mitigate that skewed view of hers, of course with little to no success. It is like pulling an ostrich's head off the sand, which is impossible to do, so even in the best of circumstances, in the end Hoster has to let it go due to the lack of success. The only reason she is here right now, though, is because House Tully needs to show solidarity during the Princess Myrcella's coronation. They are, after all, her biggest supporters. The realm needs to see them united as a whole. The other reason she is here is because it would give her the opportunity to connect with her children from the north, for they would be attending also. He'll leave her troublemaking for the Northerners to deal with. Speaking of which, Hoster can't help but notice the lack of people as they pass homestead after homestead. Rivendell and its territories are a large place, and with how they design their settlements by homesteads, very few houses can be found all on its own. However, even the larger homesteads, he notices, are rather empty. This is not the first time that Hoster has been in Rivendell. Traffic here might be sparse and non-existent due to the wide roads, but it has never been this scarce. Of course the reason for that is soon making itself palpable. He hears it before he sees it. Thousands of voices echoing in the air as the view of Holdstown can be seen, and far ahead, the last homely house of Rivendell. Rivendell Chambers behind the newly dubbed Royal Hall. So, how do I look, Dilia? Deiana simply smiles, seeing Myrcella twirl around her yellow and black gown befitting royalty. Of course, it contains the Baratheon colors, since she would be the one pushing the honor and prestige of her late father's house. Unlike the usual gowns also of Westeros, Myrcella's gown is form-fitting and made of the finest silk and leather. It has no frills or laces, and the 100 other ornaments that other ladies of the court tend to wear this era. Beautiful as ever, Cella. Are you sure, however, that you do not want your hair to be down in this event? She asks, looking at the braided bun that Myrcella favors for today atop her head. This is probably the first time that Deiana sees that hairstyle on her lover. She knows that Myrcella likes her hair to be free and not braided like her deceased mother. Deiana admits that it might be because she admires how her teacher, always lets her hair fall free. A small scowl appears at Myrcella's face as her cheeks puff up. I don't want to, but Lady Amelia insisted. She said that it would look queenly instead of my usual hairstyle. Deiana can't help but roll her eyes at that. They all love Amelia, but her Castellan and future Lady of Riverrun can be a bit of stickler for details and decorum. Seeing, however, that she has to be the one to manage the 1001 things that keeps Rivendell and its territories into continuing its growing prosperity, it is not too surprising about that character of hers. Myrcella is good friends with Amelia, like all in their little group, but with the coronation coming up and the Castellan of Rivendell becoming busier and busier as it draws closer, so does her stiff and testy attitude. As a result, Myrcella has taken into avoiding her like the plague at the moment, seeing that she does not desire to be the subject of lecture about rules and propriety being the main event. Of course, this serves only to irritate Amelia even more as the quirks of the Crown Princess becomes even more erratic. This is really happening, isn't it? Delia, Myrcella asks, sitting on one of the cushions as she stares at the mannequin which bears the spare of the royal gown that she would be wearing for the event. Yes, it does. Queen Myrcella Baratheon, that has a good ring to it, won't you agree? Asks Deiana, sitting beside Myrcella. I think so. I never thought that I would be crowned princess. You know, I have always imagined that it would go to Joffrey. He is the eldest son, after all. Now here I am, days away from sitting on the most powerful seat on the entire land, and Joffrey lay dead. A pile of ash somewhere. Does that make me a bad person, Delia, glad of his death? If your brother is in any way possess a decent bone in his body, Cella, then I would say that he deserves your sorrow. However, no offense intended for good King Joffrey. But look me in the eye, Myrcella. If you truly believe that your brother would be a good king for the Seven Kingdoms... No, he wouldn't, answers Myrcella after a moment of silence. He would have dragged the Seven Kingdoms to war if he has remained king. Then it is a good thing he is in whatever version of heaven or hell he is in right now. Yes. Look at the bright side. Cella, with you at the throne, you would have a chance to continue your father's legacy in a better way. There is also the small thing that you would not be ruling in a city whose smell is designed to specifically give you air poisoning and shorten your lifespan, points out Deiana. Right. A mischievous smirk appears on Marcella's face as she mock glares at her lover. And I guess I should thank someone for turning that city to ash and conveniently getting rid of my opposition, making her seat the de facto capital of the Seven Kingdoms. Yes, you should. She's great. Awesome and powerful, after all, sniffs Deiana, making the two of them laugh as their hands clasp. Deep inside her, though, Deiana's stomach churns. She might have not the same morals as before in her previous life, but snuffing out thousands of innocent souls still gives her the heebie-jeebies. At least with soldiers, she can justify killing them, but innocent people, she mentally shudders at that. There's also the mental state of Marcella. The young woman is sweet, knowledgeable, and can be a firecracker if pushed. She has the characteristics of a decent queen, knowing compassion and when to be logical and cold. It is not surprising since she fought with Deiana during the War of the Faith in secret. The glaring flaw in her personality, however, is her reliance with Deiana. Take into example the destruction of King's Landing. When Deiana tells her about it, she asks if she's okay with it, and when Deiana said yes, she brushes it off like just another news report. Anyone else might have been horrified, but for her, since the Lady of Rivendell looks at it as no issue, she also assumes the same. Deiana doesn't know if such dependence on her by the one she loves makes her sick, or agree with her controlling character. It is too late to cry over spilled milk. However, Marcella is whom Marcella is, and Deiana would go along with it, as best as she can. She just has to remind herself not to abuse the absolute trust that the crown princess of the realm gives unto her. Rivendell Coronation Hall. The welcoming hall of Rivendell has been expanded and redesigned to a T in expectation of the coronation of Marcella Baratheon. Although beautifully made already in its wonder and aesthetic, the Green Men, under the supervision of Lord Marcus, have fanatically refurbished the already perfect hall to even greater abounds. As far as they are concerned, if the peons of the Seven Kingdoms are visiting to marvel at the glory and the majesty of their Messiah, her dwelling must never be found wanting. The open archways of Rivendell has been designed with yellow and golden gleaves with flowers of gossamer and jade. Beautiful pearls adorn the sides, literally screaming their purity and whiteness to the eyes that bear witness to them. Flowers of silver and gold are littered at the floor with carved runes on them. Green vines, flowering roses of pink, white, and red hug the pillars and columns of the hall. The higher levels are upgraded also about their formal glory. Transparent curtains of red, blue, yellow, and gold are attached at the open windows, illuminating the entire inside of the hall in a symphony of colors. The Green Men are not the only ones who have a hand at the redecoration. Their lady has added her own little tidbit. What is it? They do not know. It is mesmerizing, though, as her work seems to create a rain of gold, silver dust like flitting fairies in the night. A red carpet has been laid at the middle of the hall, cutting through its entire width, heading to a raised section at the forefront, where a throne that looks like it is grown out from the roots of a tree awaits. It is inlaid with ivory and silver, and at the top is a gem the size of a palm glittering like 1,000 diamonds, the queen's jewel, a proof that the queen's right to rule is divine and blessed by the gods. At each side of the throne flies the banners of House Baratheon of the Crowned Stag, and at the middle is the spear of Rivendell in a sea of blue. 12 golden statues can be found parallel at the steps heading up to the throne. Each pair a crowned stag with antlers raised facing each other, at their mouths being gripped a bronze spear. At the right and the left of the red carpet are large circular tables draped in red mantles. Chairs made out of the finest wood, painted white wood, smoothed to an extent that would have made any woodworker jealous. At the top back of each chair is the carved insignia of a stag's face. Each table has a nameplate with the names of whom sits where. The people of Rivendell themselves made sure that they would live up to their ladies' standards. At the sides of the tables are 2 long tables inlaid with 100 different recipes of exotic food and wine, from roasted pigs dipped in honey, to flying swans mummified in cream and milk, to giant blue marlins saturated in bitter herbs. Food is aplenty, bread and butter for those with more generous tastes, lined like a freight train over the tables with cakes, raisins, and dates aplenty. Dessert is also present from fountains of chocolate adorned with moving ballerinas, or birds, donuts of different designs, and soups of every taste and kind. Teas purposefully exported from the eastern kingdoms are also present, their fragrant smells wafting over the entire room, mixing with the spices of the main dishes. Wine is aplenty of every kind, from the more unique butterbeers and fire whiskey produced only in Rivendell, to the more common ones like Arbor Gold and the Dornish Red. There is a rumor afloat that every tavern and inn from here to the entirety of the Riverlands has been emptied of their stocks of wine and ale. All in all, everything is ready as the servants open the gates to let the visiting dignitaries of lords and ladies in. The event is finally starting. Joe holds town, Rivendell. The coronation of the soon-to-be Queen Myrcella Baratheon is a momentous affair for the people of Rivendell. They, after all, fought and bled for her on the battlefield. The thousands of banners hang on the streets and windows of the main town outside the last homely house. Vendors and merchants come in the hundreds from all corners of Westeros and the other continents to sell their wares. Troubadours, masks, and dozens upon dozens of entertainment litter the streets, regaling people of stories and legends from different parts of the world. The citizens of Rivendell themselves are in a festive mood as they laugh and mingle with one another, many of the citizens moving in droves at whatever catches their fancy. The streets are filled with the carriages of coming and going nobles alongside their retinues. For the coronation, they are not the only ones using the road, though. Royals and representatives of different lands and petty kingdoms, knights, warriors, well-known and wealthy merchants, and there is even a representative of the Iron Bank of Braavos. Of course, with such a long line of people with high egos in a singular place, and with a penchant in loving to hear their own voices, suffice it to say that fights are inevitable. It is only the matter of when. Already there are 3 roadside brawls between 10 different visiting knights, a fist fight in a tavern, and the accidental murder of 3 troubadours by a pissed-off noble. For the first time in Rivendell's history since its creation, the proud Death Dealers found themselves deployed alongside the Silver Knight Order to keep the peace of the town that is filled to the brim. Of course, with such large amounts of people, it can only mean a mountain for paperwork upon the poor bureaucrat handling the visitors for the event. Thankfully, said poor bureaucrat, at the moment, for the first time in her life, is neglecting her duties as she instead strolls alongside her other sisters in heart, seeing the sights. We should have hosted the coronation event at the Colosseum instead of the Castle Amelia, comments Rhaenys dressed in pure black form-fitting leather with gold trimmings, her dual swords at her hips. A nearby knight walks into a wall with how much he is ogling her derriere. The castle won't be enough to hold such large crowds. I agree with the Lady Rhaenys, Lady Amelia, says Yasmina, ever the dutiful aide to Amelia when she's working. She's dressed in an oriental gown of ET with wide-open sleeves and tie at her waist. Deiana places her little suggestion, though, and a side of the gown has been cut to show off her right leg up to her outer thigh when she walks. The castle won't be enough to hold such large crowds. It is what it is, ladies, replies Amelia, curtly dressed in her own silver dress, adorned by moonstones, hugging her frame snugly. It stops somewhere just above the middle of her chest, showing her generous upper blossoms daringly and also the entirety of her collarbone, shoulders, back, and bare arms. Her hair, as always, is in a bun. A throat gem has been tied around her neck with a blazing emerald on its center. Rivendell will be the seat of the 7 kingdoms, and Deiana makes it clear that we must go on with this, despite the challenges we are facing now. Besides, it's not as if we can change the venue now that our guests have arrived. The only reply is Rhaenys' grumbling about guards complaining, as the 3 focus on the people around them. The gates of Rivendell, which usually isn't manned, is fully staffed by Death Dealers. There are almost 50 of them, alongside dozens of archers on duty at the walls as the crowds of people line up to get admitted to the last homely house. I have to admit that I never expect the other nations would start sending their envoys that quickly. It is not too long since our little Sella won the War of Kings. Amelia says, looking at the red banner with the Eagle of Geash on it. A man wearing a toga holds it with a dozen legionnaires around him as his guard. A few meters behind him are other banners with representatives like Braavos, Mir Pentos, and Volantis. There are also the members of Lorath, Lys, Tyrosh, Norvos, and Quhor. Dozens more minor countries are present. It is rather surprising to see the delegates of other nations present at Westeros. Few to none of them even grace the coronation of Targaryens, or even that of Robert. Some of them she even recognized as those who visited before. There are the white outfits of the Kingdom of Abawa, the proud knights of Araluan, the disciplined Arashis of Nehanja, the stalwart bodies of Sparta, the opulent headgears of those from Goguryeo, and the rich apparelled eunuchs of UT. Others are present with their representatives, while some have their monarchs with them. This would be one coronation to remember, exclaims Yasmina. Today will define this continent's future for generations to come, she sums up all their thoughts. Rivendell, Coronation Hall. The blast of the trumpet above gives the signal that whatever time for contemplation Deiana has is cancelled. All her plans are already coming into culmination. Keep an eye on everyone, Hidden One, Deiana orders to the shadow behind her curtain, who nods at her words in obedience.
That is my job. My lady, the Hidden One, bows before disappearing silently to the gloom behind him, giving zero indication that he is there even a second ago.
As always, she is impressed as to how efficient the Order of Spies and Assassins are at remaining unseen. Deiana marches down the hidden corridor before appearing in a hidden alcove on the wall. As she expects, Marcus is there waiting for her alongside her beloved, making final-minute preparations in the Crown Princess's attire. My lady, the ceremony is about to start. Obviously an exasperated but respectful Marcus says as he approaches her and begins smoothing the small wrinkles off of Deiana's attire. Apologies, Elder Marcus, I have some last-minute things I need to check out. Deiana only nods at the curious gaze of Myrcella. Very well, my lady, you already know the drill. Your name is the first to be called any minute now, says the Elder of the Green Men, stepping back once he's satisfied with her outfit. Thank you, Elder Marcus, she replies. The man has always been overzealous in his desire to serve her. Until now, the awe and adoration of the Green Men to her has not faded away. It even increased if Deiana is going to be more accurate. Either way, she makes use of their fanatical service to her with prudence. You look beautiful, Delia. Myrcella's melodic tone makes Deiana look at the crown princess who looks nervous and unsure. For good reason, she knows. The young woman is to be crowned queen after all. Thank you, Sella, Deiana gives Myrcella her usual beautiful smile she reserves only for her lover. I know I'm beautiful, you're the one who sewed my outfit after all. The dress that Deiana is wearing now is something Myrcella made. Elsa has put her foot down on Deiana, wearing her ornate outfit from UT, since she doesn't want anyone else seeing Deiana exposing so much skin, except for her and her sisters in heart. The dress is of the purest white that covers her entire form from shoulder to ankles. Normally, Deiana would have wanted that it would have a slit at the side for her leg to be seen and bare at her collar. Myrcella, however, disagrees at that, for the same reasons above. Thus, after many arguments which lead to a heated session of kissing and touching, Deiana settles on simply a sleeveless form of the dress. At her arms are white, long gloves that reach to her elbows. Something that Myrcella finds amusing. Much to her annoyance, however, Myrcella also insists that a white cape be added tied to a brooch on her throat. If not for the fact that she does love the young woman, she would have protested at that. As it is, she can't say no to the puppy dog eyes of her beloved. Now here she is, looking regal and beautiful as Myrcella says it. Of course, not everyone can have their dresses sewn by royal hands. It is a privilege, chuckles Myrcella. Deiana is glad that despite her nervousness, Myrcella finds the effort to joke. She can see that despite her doubts, her lover can finish this demand of responsibility assigned to her. The sound of horns, followed by silence, makes Deiana take a deep breath, knowing well what's going to happen next. It is time. Everyone, please stand in recognition of the Lady of Rivendell, my lords, my ladies. I am proud to present Lady Deiana Tully. The booming voice of the herald outside announces in a flourish, followed by the beating of heavy drums. The wooden doors in front of her open and Deiana releases her breath, focusing her features to a smiling but proud one as she steps out. Immediately a wall of cheers greet her as she can see the raised dais far ahead, the red carpet. Seats of the round tables are full of guests waiting at the open sides. Down below the archways, she can see gardens and vegetation full of seats are the citizens of Rivendell, clapping and hollering at the sight of their lady. Many of them are holding flaglets and banner of the golden spear in a sea of blue, her personal sigil. Stepping out into the red carpet, she gives her best award-winning smile as she moves confidently, waving at the people and guests, whose volume even grow greater at her actions. It does not take long for her to climb the 12 steps to a seat beside the throne, which she sits on. Below the throne, she can see Elder Marcus with the scepter and seal of gold that represents royalty waiting. Beside the steps of the throne stand also her friends and personal confidants. She can see Emilia, the Castellan of Rivendell Rhaenys, commander of the Death Dealers, Yasmina, her personal aide, Catelyn Jon Stark, Prince of Dol Amroth, Lord Draco, Castellan of Osgiliath, her father, Lord Hoster, and her brother who is grinning, Lord Edmure Tully, all cherished allies, both early and late. She can also espy another chair with Sir Loras on it, a place in the council for the Prince Consort of the realm. Sit in her simple seat beside the throne, she relaxes as the booming drums once more start with the sounds disappearing, though there are still many eyes glued to her. Announcing the crown princess of the Seven Kingdoms, victorious over the War of Kings, the doe who stands victorious, the daughter of Robert Baratheon, coming to claim her throne, Princess Myrcella Baratheon. The booming voice of the herald follows another set of drum beats as the doors once more open. To say that Deiana is proud would be an understatement. Holding the sides of her elegant Baratheon-themed gown with a confident but soft smile, Myrcella walks out. She is the very image of a princess, smiling, sunny, and confident. She is a bit pale, but the smile never leaves her face. Her eyes look confident and happy, the vestiges of doubt not present, confidence oozing at her very form. All in all, she does not disappoint. She can see it, and Deiana is sure that everyone can see it too. The people and even nobles cheer her name. Some looks doubtful and disapproving, but they are a paltry few compared to the thousands clapping. Things are going very well as Myrcella climbs the 12 stairs before pausing on the last one, where the Elder Marcus awaits. She meets Deiana's gaze for a minute before giving her a wink. She simply rolls her eyes at the mischievous young woman. The Elder looks proud as he stares at her. Marcus has been one of Myrcella's teachers when she's fostering, and his burning pride of her is obvious for everyone to observe. As he composes himself, he speaks in the elder tongue of the first men in prayer before gesturing for Myrcella to kneel as propriet demands. Deiana watches as the crown of gold with dancing stags on them is placed atop Myrcella's head, and finally her gloves are asked to be taken off as she is given the scepter and Valyrian sword, Queen Ascendant, freshly forged contribution of the Knights of the Vale, who generously donated their heirlooms by being dead. She can see clearly that Myrcella is a bit nervous as she takes the items. The elder finishes his prayers before beckoning to Myrcella to stand up and face her people and guests. Announcing first of her name, Myrcella Baratheon, Queen of the Andals, and Rhoynar and First Men, Lady of the Eight Kingdoms, and Protector of the Realm. Long may she reign. Long may she reign. The thousands of voices boom out as she ascends to the throne, and standing before it, facing everyone. My people, Myrcella's melodious voice is clear as day as she stares at everyone. A permanent sonorous charm powered by a rune has been placed on the throne, standing discreetly. There is no greater honor than the one that I being bestowed today. All my life, I never expected to be given this seat, but the gods say otherwise. Now I am a queen of a nation, of a people, a single kingdom, united. When father and mother passed, I am alone. I do know, however, my responsibility as my title as Crown Princess, as dictated by my father, Robert Baratheon. Many challenged me, but here I stand. One cannot fault the Mormonts puffing out their chests at the mention of their family motto. I know my destiny, and I know that I would rule. What does it mean, however, to be a ruler? A ruler is someone that watches over and protects the ones she rules. A ruler is someone that is brave and courageous, able to rally the people of a kingdom to do feats to protect what is most important of them all, their freedom to be who they are. A ruler is someone who empowers her people, that on the other way around gives her the strength she needs to lead. Today I am a queen, crowned a ruler that demands loyalty from her people, but gives nothing in return, is not worthy of any crown. She pauses as she looks at Deiana. I know someone who is worthy of that crown, worthy of all our loyalty, trust, and faith. She has shown herself wise, courageous, determined, and brilliant in every way. She is also kind, loving, and a dear mentor of mine. I am a queen today, but I declare my partner in life the one I marry and witness before gods and men, my lords, my ladies, citizens, let's bear witness to one who is brave and true, the one I love, Queen Deiana Tully, my queen consort. Deiana preens like a peacock as she stands up to the deafening cheers around her. Marcella takes her hand with hers and raises it to even more cheering and clapping. Deiana just smiles and waves through it all. From bastard to the de facto ruler of the 8 kingdoms now, she has just earned her title of the Great, and one that would be recorded in the annals of history. She can see a lot of disapproving looks from many lords and ladies, though. She has no doubt that they would raise hell and high water, given the chance. She's unconcerned. The food they are about to partake are all heavily dosed by loyalty potions beforehand. Nothing gets past Queen Deiana Tully, or at least, mostly nothing gets past her. All of them will bow. Rivendell, 1 year since the coronation of Marcella Baratheon to the throne. Marcella sighs as she reads one of the reports at her desk submitted to her by the council. It is nothing of really great import, just a request for a minor house needing her signature for one of its bastards to name as his heir. It is one of the fair few that get past the courts and reach her. Even though she's queen, the majority of the things she does these days are signing things and reviewing stuff that needs her attention. Leave it to Deiana to make a system that would give me the most comfort as possible. Marcella internally muses, fondly remembering her wife and partner as she presses her seal at the bottom of the paper before shifting to the next one. Being Queen of the 7 Kingdoms is not as hard as Marcella expects it to be, due to Deiana's new policies. She can still vividly remember the long-winded sessions that Jon Arryn, her surrogate grandfather, had before when dealing with the matters of the real. She also remembered the insanely large amount of requests and paperwork littering her table every night as he tried his damnedest to pull the realm together. Now here she is, only dealing with things to sign instead of the insane amount of judgments and petitions that once belonged to the crown. The council and the courts deal with most of the running of the day-to-day of the realm, only throwing the ones that need her seal or the most important ones to her. A couple of cries make turn Marcella's attention away from her work as she stands up and walks to where beside her working table is a large crib. Out of all the blessings that come with her new position in life is this. 2 blessings of great note. The Prince Harrison Baratheon and the Princess Alia Baratheon, her twin children. Harrison has brown hair with blue eyes, while Alia has midnight black hair and emerald eyes. They are both absolutely beautiful, and Marcella adore them. Just as Deiana promises, she does not need to lay with Loras to get her children. The young man is very well loving the more handsome sex, and he happily agrees for any alternative that would make him fulfill his promise to his family and at the same time still pursue his preferences. It leads to a visit on the Green Isle where a ritual is made under Deiana's supervision with her and Loras. The 2 of them have gone into the world of dreams when it started and wake up only once. It's done. Next thing the 2 of them know, Marcella is pregnant with twins. Loras, at first, is skeptical when they told him that biologically it would be his children also. Only when Marcella has given birth and the young man lays eyes on the children does he fully acknowledge it's his. Both, after all, have the classic Tyrell face and good genes. Pretty sure that Deiana adds her own coin in my children, though. Marcella thinks, looking at her fussing daughter who has wet her nappies again. The trademark black hair is proof enough of that. Her wife can be a bit selfish that way. Making sure that her 2 angels are asleep and comfy as possible, Marcella stands up before returning to her table to continue and catch up with her paperwork. The 8 kingdoms are enjoying a time of recovery and prosperity right now. The series of wars and the War of Kings have taken a lot out of Westeros. With Marcella now crowned officially as Queen of the 7 Kingdoms, the warring houses and their factions retired to their own places, every man to his own home. What baffles Marcella, however, is how easily the people accept the Constitution as the main law of the land, and her marriage with Deiana seems to lack the protest that she has been dreading. The lords and ladies of Westeros, after all, are well known for their rather great disapproval of people like her or Loras. She would bet her crown, however, that Deiana has a hand on it again. Her lover has the uncanny tendency to be the cause of the majority of the good things happening in her life. Stamping with her seal and signet the latest of the requests, she creaks her back, enjoying the pops that come out of it. It seems that she would be done early for today. This means more time for her to pursue her interests. pulling the small rope that rings a bell outside her quarters. She isn't surprised to see Yasmina enter with a curtsy at her. Marcella simply places a finger on her lips, making her friend nod in affirmation at her signal that the children are sleeping. Tippy-toeing, she whispers a small thanks to her close friend and concubine for not ever protesting about taking care of the kids, giving Marcella the free time she wants to pursue her own interests. Walking down to her more private study, she acknowledges the death dealers guarding the hallway before, once more, finding herself in the solitude of hers and Deiana's private room. It is rare not to see Deiana present in this room of theirs, since the Lady of Rivendell does love staying in her own house. However, Deiana right now is supervising another of her pet projects down south. Apparently, the empty accursed land where King's Landing was before is a prime opportunity that her wife is going to take full advantage of. This, of course, gives Marcella prime opportunity to commandeer the room for her own, or to be more accurate, commandeer the pensieve of Deiana. Humming to herself, she places the correct vial into the waters before dunking her face inside in order to watch The Lord of the Rings. Deiana might have her side projects and Marcella has her own. In the past year or so, she's been trying her hand in novelizing the series that she's lucky enough to watch in her wife's pensieve. Water Gardens, Dorne. The sound of a plunger being pulled out is almost the same as Irian's lips separates from that of Rhaenys. Sighing, Rhaenys wipes her lips from the drool, connecting to the lips of the buxom beauty that is the princess currently draped over her side. Officially, Rhaenys is here as the diplomatic ambassador of Rivendell to Dorne as proof of the friendship between the two kingdoms. Unofficially, she is here for vacation with permission from Deiana and Sella. The reason, however, why she has to take said vacation is because of Arianne. Another unofficial reason is for Dorne to be dosed by a loyalty draft, lacing the crates of cold butterbeer, a gift from Rivendell to the Prince of Dorne. The man has failed to show up at the coronation due to his gout, and Deiana is not taking any chances. The Dornish princess has been nagging her non-stop ever since she has accidentally slipped that she has never been to Dorne after her death. Thus, in an effort to finally shut up the newest members of their little group, Rhaenys agrees to her proposal that she visits the land of her mother. Now here she is, officially a visitor from Rivendell. Her uncle Doran almost faints as if he has seen a ghost when he first meets her. He manages to compose himself, however, and welcomes her to Dorne as a visitor. He repeats the same pale visage when she introduces herself as Rhaenys, before collecting his expression once again. That is 2 months ago, and he has been keeping watchers on her. At first, she's been wary of it, her training as a death dealer and the instincts of a fighter inherited from Sir Arthur Dayne kicking in. With a private discussion, however, to Deiana through the two-way mirrors, the Lady of Rivendell rests her fear after telling her that Doran is a man of logic, believing fervently in things supported with hard evidences before making a decision. Rhaenys' revival into this world, however, is a gift of the old gods, magic and sorcery, and one that would not fit into Doran's little reasonable world. Dorne is a harsh place full of deserts and mountain ranges. Its sand is full of things that would be more than happy to make a meal of you if they can. The air is hot and dry with few plants able to grow, and the Dornish, like the Northmen, learn to deal with it as best as they can, improvising and adapting with the world around them. Yet here the Dornish flourish, proud and strong. She has to admit that it is impressive. Her time at the Water Gardens, as she has to admit, interesting. When Arianne described the wonderful things that she would see her, she has certainly left out her cousins, and Nymeria and Tyane. Let's just say that the three are rather very interested in one of the women that catch their princess and cousin's attention. Long story short, she believes she would be walking bow-legged by the time she returns to Rivendell, and Ashes of King's Landing. Accursed. That is what many of the people in Westeros calls the ashes of King's Landing. In the hindsight, they have a fair point for calling it that. The wildfire works well, perhaps too well, in its intended use. There is literally nothing left standing after it burns itself out. Everything that makes King's Landing is gone, from the Dragon Pit to the giant slums and even the infamous Red Keep. Nothing remains standing. Even the stench got burned away. The only proof that a city once stands here is the blackened stone that seems to stretch on for miles, an empty, desolate wasteland where nothing grows. No one in their right mind would dare even lay claim to the giant empty space, and for good reason. Millions of ghosts have been created from the rather impromptu firestorm. No one in their right mind, unless her name is Deiana Tully, of course. Whereas others see a place that should be avoided like the plague, Deiana sees opportunity. Aegon the Conqueror is no fool. She can see that very well. The setting of King's Landing as capital of Westeros has not been chosen poorly by the first Targaryen king. No. He chose King's Landing by its strategic place being almost at the center of the continent. It is situated to be the beating heart of Westeros, on which the Seven Kingdoms can have easy access to. War may start and create kingdoms, but it is trade, income, and resource that keeps it together. King's Landing is that, a place where merchants, small folk, and traders of every kind can congregate, bringing with them the things that the Seven Kingdoms as a whole has to offer. It has access to water and perfectly suited bays where ships can drop anchor, a focal point for international trade. Deiana plans to raise something like that, though. It's more akin to Rome, where all roads will meet. We need a place of industry, trade, and commerce. Personally, while she does enjoy the fact that Rivendell is now the royal seat of the Seven Kingdoms, it gets quite irritating when the merchants, small folk, and many other people that would usually come to the capital looking for work or practice their trade start camping out outside the borders of Rivendell. The number of reports she received from a very not happy border guards are staggering, and frankly, she does not enjoy the squatters poking even near her slice of paradise. Thus, this would be her solution. Of course, on set is the little fact that this would be an opportunity for her to create again something that would monumentalize her name. Don't get it wrong, she adores Marcella and their little children. But this is probably the first time in Deliana's life where everything is quiet. Ever since she has gotten here, she has always striven for a goal to reach. It is a new thing for her to sit simply this long without nothing to really aim at. Thus, this would be her pet project. Already hundreds of nervous-looking surveyors are now worriedly checking the land for accurate measurements. Each of them are making the warding against evil as they work, and some of the more superstitious ones even brought talismans of protection. Deiana wants to snort at that. They obviously feel the former presence of the ghosts that once resided here. For everyone else, they might be a problem, but for Deiana, they are a perfect fuel source after she infuses them on her phylactery back at Rivendell for future batteries of runes. Yes, there are no ghosts anymore here. She personally takes great pleasure on dissolving Joffrey's squealing ghost to a rune that would get rid of smell. Now, one might ask as to why she is focusing here when there's an obviously big bad necromancer with this world's version of zombie apocalypse behind, its back slowly looming down south to eat their brains. Shouldn't she be preparing like mad for their upcoming arrival? The answer for that is simple. She is already prepared, or rather preparing as best as she could ever since her cute butt sits on the throne beside Marcella's. She already begins the rearming of Westeros after the war and made them aware of the threat coming their way. She is not like Dumbledore, after all, who would prefer that the people bury their heads like ostriches, unaware of the threats to their lives. No, teams of Night Watch Rangers have gone out and captured 2 whites to serve as proof to the lords and ladies of the realm about the threat above. Now said whites are being paraded around the Seven Kingdoms to every castle and hold fast as a proof to everyone that their lives are about to get more interesting once winter sets in. Of course, despite the truth trying to claw them in the face right off, there are always some lords who refuse to believe. That is why Dilia has dispatched Grandmaster Leomord of the Silver Knight's Order, alongside Ser Alysir Thorne, who looks like something large has tried to maul his face off, with the caravan escorting the white. The presence of such people is enough to ensure that even the most simple and dumbest of lords would not be able to play dumb and plead ignorance. Thus, with overwhelming support and fear of self-preservation, caravan trains by the hundreds head north, bearing supplies, weapons, and repair crews to the wall. The news that the only thing standing between them and the army of the dead is the wall with its castles broken and dilapidated is enough to galvanize everyone to at least contribute. The richer houses take it another step by hiring mercenaries from Essos and sending them to the wall to the aid of the Night's Watchmen. The poorer houses, on the other hand, made the easy way of forced conscription of the local thugs and bandits. Let's just say that by the time the War of the Dawn, as it later would be known, would be over, Westeros has never seen a more peaceful period with the amount of bad apples in the populace trimmed to the root. Deiana does not lay down all her trust in the lords and ladies of the Seven Kingdoms, of course, no. This war would be one of the largest Westeros will ever see, and it would be against undeath. Trusted death dealers travel the skies with the wings of griffins to every corner of the world, to the allies of Rivendell, calling them to arms. Now she waits for their reply. Only one so far has answered, and rather quickly too. Red priests of Essos come in force. Deiana has to put them up in a more secluded area at Dol Amroth, where they can all congregate to avoid infighting with the populace of the north, who mistrust strangers for good reason. They do not come alone, however. Nearly every temple of the Lord of Light arrive in droves. Each of them has something to offer, from mercenary groups they hired to fight the War of the Dawn, to famous pit fighters of the arena of Meereen, or supplies. All of them answers the fateful call of their Lord of Light.
That would have been the end of it if not for one day John, who is delivering the large amounts of pig fat oil to the blacksmiths for the never-ending work, dropped his sword on the coals. The moron, of course, in a panic, tried to pull it out, and one of the pig fat bags splashes on it, making him run as fast out as the workplace combusts. His sword is aflame. He tries to push it to a large sea dune. With still large amounts of oil, however, still on it, the water does not quench the fire. Thus it is still ablaze when he pulls it out. Coincidentally, a troop of red priests are taking their penance walk in the morning, when they witnessed only the part of him covered in salt water, pulling out a sword of fire from the dune.
Thus Jon Stark adds another epitaph in his name, Azor Ahai, the prince who was promised. Deiana is still amused as he reads the reports of the hidden ones there. The red priests are fawning and following the castellan of Dol Amroth like little puppies, much to the amusement of his wife. Either way, as long as he becomes a little uppity, Deiana would let it be for the meantime. She turns her eyes eastward. It is common knowledge now that dragonglass and Valyrian swords will be able to kill whites and white walkers. That is, however, man to man. In large droves, however, the best thing that would be able to challenge whites is fire, and there is nothing else that breathes and lives fire than dragons.
Where? The wall. Castle Black.
Normally, Jorah Mormont would be glad of fresh supplies coming from south to support the wall. The Night's Watch decline, at least, would be slowed down that way. The last thing that it needs is to be lacking supplies, when there are already a severe low quality about the men being recruited to its ranks. The past year, however, ever since the coronation of the Lady Myrcella Baratheon, things have turned rather different. Of course, he sends out Benjen down south to ask for aid for the Watch, and at the same time to raise the alarm of the kingdoms of men about the dead coming their way. He has expected little, of course, except a fresh group of conscripts from them, grumpkins and snarks, as the late Tyrion Lannister would say when it comes to the southern opinion about the wall and the men guarding it. Imagine his surprise when wagons arrive carrying fresh timber, stone, and building materials alongside new, fresh recruits. These are not your usual band of ill-tempered prisoners and no-gooders, no. These are second, third, and fourth sons from knightly and noble houses answering the call. An excited Benjen arrives with them, bringing the good news that the new Queen Consort and de facto ruler of Rivendell, the new capital of Westeros, are raising hell about their plight. He also carries direct orders from the Queen for them to capture 2 whites as proof to everyone below. It costs the Night's Watch 50 men, but they are successful with it. Now with Sir Lazar Thorn in tow, the proud knights of the Silver Wing Order arrive to pick up their cargo and go off with it. Then comes another caravan, and another, and another. It seems almost a never-ending supply train that arrive, each carrying sigils of different houses. It is like a dream come true for Jorah Mormont. Each of the caravans carry a lot from food supplies, building supplies, alongside that miracle sand called cement, from Rivendell, oil, wood, tar, iron, steel, stone, everything that the Night's Watch has been desperately needing. Stonemasons, wood masons, blacksmiths, fletchers, armorers, all arrive with the caravans to help. Small hills of rice arrive also alongside copious amounts of turkey meat. For a time, the Night's Watch food ration would usually only have meat in the most special of occasions. Recruits also, and volunteers willing to man and repair the wall, comes in thousands that it makes Jorah's head spin. He's supposed to be happy, but now he's not. Organizing and planning all these is making his head hurt. If he's lucky, he'll get 4 hours sleep in the day, and 2 at worst. Everything at Castle Black is being replaced. Even his office. Now it looks more like a lord's proper office, with a comfy, warm place and fur-covered seats with a study and open windows. It certainly beats its previous design, which looks more akin to a sergeant's resting place. All the castles at the wall is being restored. All 19 of them. If one might have told generations of Lord Commanders that one day the castles of the entirety of the wall would be repaired and manned, they might have laughed. Now Jar is seeing it, the massive workforce that is still growing by the day, working like an entire beehive, transforming everything that they can. The old defenses of the Watch, it almost makes him want to weep. Seeing the massive trebuchets and ballistas of the wall taken down and replaced by new siege engines with the latest doodads of engineering. He might have been more happy if not for the fact that the army of the dead is approaching them slowly as each day passes. Ashes of King's Landing. Catelyn flinches once more as she hears it. A mad, cackling laugh, which always ends with "burn them all." She has been personally assigned by her bastard queen sister. The thought of her title almost makes her froth at the mouth as the senior recorder of the surveyors of the Ashes of King's Landing. It is supposed to be a noble job, a work personally assigned by a member of the royal family. There are two problems, though. First is the fact that the job is more akin to that of a glorified secretary writing down everything that the surveyors bring to her in painstaking detail, which is beneath her as a lady of a noble house. More than once she has been forced to swallow her pride as she has to ask the surveyors, common-born small folk, to explain to her what they meant, much to her ire. The second is the fact that she believes this place to be accursed and she is being haunted. Every now and then she can feel a chill as if something passes her, followed by that insane cackling. She has already brought with her the 7 talismans of the 7 to ward off evil. So why is she still being haunted? She shivers once more as something cold brushes against her, followed by the sound of that cackle. "Gods, I want to get out of this place," she murmurs inside, while at the same time cursing her new position where Catelyn has no choice but to be polite to her. At her vantage point, Deiana Tully giggles as the released ghost of Aerys Targaryen from her phylactery follows her half-sister around. "Who said that vengeance isn't sweet?"